right, welcome on in to another episode of DCU Daily on Oh So Curious. It's a Friday. We are on 4th of July Eve in the US, so happy early 250th birthday to America. Of course, we're going to probably go past the midnight hour here. So that being said, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are married. Adam Sandler officiated the wedding. It was at Madison Square Garden. So there you go. I also heard that Disneyland just got their billionth guest in anticipation of their 71st anniversary. So a couple of little tidbits there that we will not discuss any further on the show tonight. But what we will talk about on the show is, of course, there was a bombshell report that the Hollywood Reporter just released earlier today. It turns out Supergirl had multiple cuts and Gunn and Gillespie did not get along. And, I was talking about it earlier this week, last week. It seems like there was probably going to be more to what caused Supergirl to ultimately feel like the movie that it did. The kind of thing that we, felt like what happened with Captain America 4, Brave New World, where clearly there's a lot of studio interference or studio mandated changes. I mean, and they tried to make it better, but in this case, and in the case of Captain America, we might have ended up with a worse movie in the end. So we'll get into all the details on that. A new Mr. Miracle series might also be in the works. And of course, we've got some Marvel news. We're going to talk about the opening weekend projections as of right now for Spider-Man Brand New Day, as well as the Minions and Monsters opening weekend in this holiday period over the 4th of July. And we've got lots more quick hits beyond that. And John is back on the show today. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Stick with us. And, we're going to be here with you because it's DCU Daily. And then after that, it's Fancast Friday. And you guys chose DCU Batman. So it's going to be a fun one, everybody. Let's talk to Ken.
It doesn't seem to matter what I do. I'm always the number two.
All right, mister, I need to paint my abs on to get nominated. You don't see Robert Downey doing that.
You're kidding. You're kidding. I can't open the envelope without the...
Warner Brothers is heading back into the Matrix with a new movie in the works.
Wonder what other surprises are in store.
I want to be Bruce Wayne. I like that. You're gonna love me.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see chords.
Right there.
You look ridiculous.
Well, not no more, he don't.
What, dude? I can barely understand you. Your accent's insane.
What the
Give me a hand up. Nope, I'm actually okay. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. Wow.
Right. Okay. It's a Friday show. It's the last DCU Daily of the week. So, we thought it would be a slow news day. And, in a lot of ways it is, because ultimately it's a 4th of July holiday in the US. So a lot of the, the sources of news, those folks are on their vacation. So, yeah. But hey, we are here to talk about all the DC stuff. And with me today, returning after a hiatus, if you will, John was on assignment all week, but he is back today. John, how are you doing?
Hello. I am here. I'm back. Don't you worry about me. Don't you forget about
I knew you were good.
either. Yeah. But
Saw
here
that
I am.
coming. Yeah.
Decided to take a long deserved break. I've been really pushing it far at the Oh So Curious. So I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's not get burnt out. Because remember, mental health, people, very important. Plus, just all the negative news from Supergirl was kind of getting to me a little bit. Made me kind of sad, maybe a little depressed. I mean, maybe that seems silly, but it's just like all the negative Nancy's out of here, just like going on and on about it was just didn't make me feel good. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a step back from the news. I'm gonna take a step back from, all the negative people out there. So that's what I did. So, but I'm back.
Well,
I'm here right in time for Fancast Friday. I have some bangers that I picked for DCU Batman that I think y'all will appreciate. So here we are. Back at it again.
We'll
Thank
get to
God
that
it's
later.
Friday.
We'll get to that
But
later.
obviously,
I'll have a
we got
thing or two to
DCU
say
Daily
about
first, but-
it. Yeah, there's a lot to get into. Of course, Steven is here. Dan and John, barbecue and fireworks tomorrow. Yeah, It was thunderstorms and lightning here today. I had to drive around a bunch of fallen trees in my neighborhood. Hello to Caleb, honka honka, first in the chat today. Steven, like I said hello. Dan, hello to John. Of course, Monique is here. Howdy, y'all. Fantastic Friday to ya.
Guys,
It's
I'm already ready for the next comic
night
book film.
in the house.
Enough of this Supergirl talk. I'm ready. I'm ready for the next one, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
Well, unfortunately, John, we will likely be talking about a lot of Supergirl today because later in the show, we're gonna go through that report in detail in the Hollywood Reporter. Caleb saying I might hate the film industry right now, but I'm glad to be on the show like this. Yeah, DCU Batman casting for the 100th time.
No, this is like the fourth one at this point. So
I guess it's.
But all the people want to see more Batman, so we gotta fucking talk about Batman.
So okay. Now on that lovely note, as we usually do,
love the profile. I don't know when you changed it, Caleb, but I love that new profile pic.
Is that 3 of them? You got 3 of the.
No, I think he just grabbed the picture on offline.
I see. Okay, wow. Okay, stacking up the foreskin. All right. Gunn DCU 2025 to 2028. BR Justin. Hello, BR Justin. Let's not write it off just yet. I will say that this doesn't mean that it's the end of the world just yet. But let's keep going. The first thing that we usually do on most shows is talk about the box office. So it is a Friday, so let's start with talking about the Minions and Monsters movie that is out now. And I mentioned it yesterday. It was already off to a pretty good start. $14+ million heading into its opening day. Today was the official opening day, and it does look like it's coming up a little bit short based on what the initial projections were. It does have I believe an A- cinema score, so it's not too bad. The Rotten Tomato score is also pretty healthy for this franchise, which by the way is the second highest grossing animated franchise of all time, already having grossed $5.6 billion with the past 5 movies. So they're averaging more than $1 billion a piece. So this would be the 6th, and then they've talked about potentially doing a 7th. So with that, 63 million is what's expected over the course of the 5-day holiday weekend within the US. John, if you scroll down a little bit in this article, they do talk about why that is a bit disappointing, because initial projections did hope for 80 million or more. I remember they were even hoping for up to 100 million. So for this to now be aiming for around 63.5 million domestically in North America, that does feel that like it's quite a ways off from the initial expectations. And even a few days ago 80 million was what they were thinking. So yeah, 16 million is ultimately where it's landing on Thursday into Friday. So that's again more than what we talked about yesterday, but they expect the movie to sort of like take a bit of a dip on the second half of the weekend. So John, your reactions to this, because I mean worldwide it's going to do better and we'll talk about that in a moment, but at least for the domestic audience, are they kind of over this Minions franchise, or do you think this thing will have legs?
It's entirely possible that they are. Maybe Minions and Monsters won't entirely fucking obliterate Supergirl. Just kind of beat it. I mean, that's kind of the obvious one. It's going to go into, 3rd place, but that's but not as big of a gap as we thought. So, I think it also, there is the idea that, because I think the last 2 Minions movies were the lowest grossing, if I remember correctly. Rise of Gru and I think Despicable Me 4 were the last ones, and those were still big earners. They still reached I think at least $800 million club. So they're still big. Like, it's still huge. People still like Minions, but it's just like, oh, maybe not as much. Maybe I could imagine like maybe this, maybe not quite reaching that, but like maybe 700 to 800 million. Maybe, we'll see. But maybe it'll just be like a quiet buildup. Maybe, with the heat wave, people don't want to leave their house. They just want to stay in and all that. So maybe they're not going to the movies as much. I don't know. But yeah, I think so it seems like not as big, but still it's pretty big opening though.
Yeah, no. It's certainly a big improvement on what Supergirl did, right? So it's a decent size opening, and it's respectable. It's the kind of thing that I think for an animated movie franchise that is going to have legs. I think this is a good start. It is disappointing at any level when your projections were 80 million to 100 million, and you slowly have dropped to 63 million. I think I look at it as more of what's going on with the movies at the box office in general, because like what are people going to see? It's 4th of July holiday. It's a heat wave in the US. people want to be inside in a cool movie theater. So if they're not going to see Minions, then what are they going to go see? Are they just going to go see Obsession and Backrooms? Again, Backrooms is coming back with a 15-minute bonus footage version. So you can go watch actually two versions of the movie, the OG one and the one with the extra 15 minutes. You still have Disclosure Day playing. You still have Supergirl, Toy Story 5. Yeah, so, we'll see. But hello to Kyle. Thank you for joining in. Of course, if you guys are here watching, please do hit the like button. We really do appreciate that. It helps get the show out in front of more people. And we are continuing to grow the community here. So, John, let's move on to the international numbers beyond just the domestic, because internationally, this movie, and worldwide, as this movie is going to do relatively well still. It's already beyond the US. It's taken on, actually, no, I think they're talking about this worldwide. Just going into the weekend, it's already brought in overall 62 million plus, which is impressive. If you scroll down in this article, we can do a bit of a breakdown. And that's not the number for the whole weekend. What they're talking about here, I'll read it off the article here. They're saying that Minions and Monsters has already scared up 62.6 million at the global box office after 2 days of release in the US, and additional territories going Wednesday, because they did do a Wednesday release because it's a 4th of July 5-day holiday weekend. And so, you get to count the numbers from Wednesday all the way into Friday already. And on Thursday, Minions grossed 10.8 million in US and Canada, following its Wednesday opening minus any previews, which had another 14.3 million. I mentioned the A- cinema score. So now the domestic cume, as of the report, the time of this report on Friday morning, was 25 million. But worldwide, it's already off to a 62 million plus start. I'd imagine they're going to probably double that number by the end of the weekend, because we just talked about the US projection is 63 million. I'd imagine it will do at least that much abroad, if not more. So again, the movie will probably get off to 125 million plus start. So John, I don't think the Minions franchise is any kind of trouble, especially because even if it doesn't make $1 billion, I feel like 600 to 700 million is probably still plenty for these movies. Like, not every movie in this franchise has hit $1 billion, but a few of them have. They already average $1 billion apiece.
Maybe 3. So, I think the first Minions did, and then one of the Despicable Me sequels.
Exactly.
Maybe another one.
And Toy Story is still going really strong, like Justin is talking about. Toy Story 5 is probably going to be a $1 billion film. And then you got the Odyssey and Brand New Day coming out later, with Spider-Man taking over the box office. So until then, these are the big heavy hitters, because certainly Supergirl was not. Like, are you surprised? I mean, what are your if I were to ask you, what's your prediction for the final box office from Minions and Monsters?
I said 700 to 800 million.
Okay. Based on how the numbers have gone down, I would probably peg it somewhere between 600 to 700 million. I feel like that, considering where it's opening, and the competition coming up with the Odyssey in 3 weeks, 600 to 700 million. I mean, it's gonna continue to play, and Universal will likely leave it in theaters for a while too. So, but hey, you know what? Speaking of the Odyssey, there's another superhero movie coming out a few weeks after that, and that is, of course, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Which, John, Spider-Man Brand New Day, we have talked about it before. We went over a report from, I think, Box Office Theory it was, and so they have updated their numbers recently about their long-term, forecast and projection for Spider-Man Brand New Day. So still, we're gonna get more updated numbers the closer we get to release time. But according to the current projections, which are about 5 weeks out, they're looking at an estimated $228 million opening for Spider-Man Brand New Day in the US, which, if I just quickly do a lookup of Spider-Man No Way Home, I believe Spider-Man No Way Home opened to 260.1 million in North America. So 228 would be very close to No Way Home heights. Not quite there, but certainly it's the first time since Deadpool and Wolverine that any movie would have opened to over 200 million. If you scroll down on this article, they do talk about how the current projections they're giving they're a range of numbers, right? They're saying on the low end, it could debut to 212 million. On the high end, it could do 255 million. And then when you average those two numbers out, they're looking at around a $228 million start. Now, remember, John, that is just the domestic number. You add on to that probably another 150 or so million dollars, if not more, internationally. It would have made 4 times as much as maybe what Supergirl is going to make in its entirety of its run. They're very much expecting Brand New Day, given if it has that big of a start, to potentially make a run at $2 billion even without Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. The previous movie sits at 1.92 billion, so a one re-release away from 2 billion. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, both the opening weekend, and then do you really think that Spider-Man could make a run at 2 billion?
I could see that.
You're right, Justin.
I mean,
yeah.
2 billion is maybe pushing it. We'll see. But it's definitely $1 billion. I mean, I could see it maybe making just as much as the previous film, but maybe not quite 2 billion. I still don't think yet.
Okay. Yeah. No. For me. Think about it. If it has a 400 million plus opening weekend, and it's the last big blockbuster of the summer, because the Odyssey would already have been out for a few weeks, right? So the Odyssey is only gonna continue to trail off, and not saying the Odyssey is gonna not give it any competition. It's gonna have IMAX exclusivity for a while, and so it's gonna keep making money. But I just don't think the Odyssey is the kind of movie that's going to get in the way of Spider-Man making $1 billion. And then the last movie that Nolan did. It wasn't like it stopped Barbie from, the Barbie ended up being the higher grossing films, because you think about the target audience. What?
It's more mainstream.
Yeah. It's also, it's that whole idea of I was saying, like, the Odyssey has more of an adult audience. And so between that and then Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is more like akin to Barbie, where the audience is going to be like a 4-quadrant audience, even though the movie is meant to be a little bit more mature and dark in its themes. You're looking at a situation where, they're targeting a much broader audience. Even though a lot of people are going to go to see the Odyssey, I don't think the Odyssey is the kind of movie that you're going to take your little kids to. Whereas Spider-Man Brand New Day promises to be just good enough that just mature enough that you adults can go and enjoy it just as much as the Odyssey, but at the same time it's not rated R like the Odyssey is, so you'll be able to go to the movie and take your kids and not worry about Deadpool pegging his partner or something like that. Or I don't know, like a better example would be Florence Pugh with a full frontal nude scene. Like, that's not going to happen in Spider-Man. So I do feel like, Spider-Man Brand New Day probably makes at least 1.5 billion. My personal projection would be 2 billion. Still seems a little high, but we didn't think that No Way Home would get there or get close to it. So it's going to be interesting to see how high it goes. I think it has as good of a chance as Avengers Doomsday to hit $2 billion. Justin's saying it's going to end at 1.5 worldwide. No Way Home was 1.9, and Far From Home was 1.1. I mean, it's also the start of a new trilogy, so maybe like this, if this one does 1.5 plus, then the next one probably does even better, and then the next one after that hits 2 billion. So we'll see. But that was the box office report. We'll leave that there for now, and we'll jump right into some movie talk madness. John, take it away. Where are we going next?
We are going to a very unsurprising place. I mean, with the live action film coming out this year, well, we got to go back to the animated side of things, because apparently Moana 3 has been officially confirmed by The Rock himself. You're going to have to wait a little bit for it, which, yeah, it's animated. It's going to take a couple of years to make that movie. But in terms of what this has to say, as we all know, Moana 2 was converted from a miniseries on Disney Plus to a feature-length film made for theaters. But with all of that, even though a lot of people said there were structural problems, obvious reasons, because considering it went from a miniseries to a movie, it kind of didn't really work. But yeah, apparently, considering that the fucking previous movie made over $1 billion, yeah, Moana 3 was going to happen eventually, whether you like it or not. So, this, I mean, we can't really read it because it's in Spanish, but apparently,
if you scroll up, they
yeah, I mean,
right
it says
there.
here, speaking at a press for live action, Moana, Dwayne Johnson confirmed a third film is on the way. It's just, this is where it was, stated. The answer is yes. We have talked about Moana 3, but first live action Moana, we let that come out first. We have amazing Jared Bush and Dana Ladeau Miller, who have been our writers. They're amazing, and they will pen Moana 3. So he has confirmed a bit. Not only is it happening, not only is it like technically greenlit, but like they got some writers too. So
Yeah.
this is probably going to take a while. The first movie came out in 2016.
It's like
right?
printing my own money, says Disney.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So
well, there's plenty more Moana
that was
to
the
come.
first one, and then how many years after was Moana 2?
Well, Moana 2 came out last year, and it was just
last year?
last year.
Dan,
Yeah, because Zootopia 2 and Moana 2 came out like the back half of last year. Remember, Moana 2 wasn't gonna be, like you said, it was gonna be a Disney Plus show, and then they, you know.
No, Moana 2 came out 2 years ago. Yeah, because
Am I wrong
Zootopia
about
2
that? Is it?
came out.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's why I was like, I'm like, that can't be right.
Oh.
I know the years are blending together, but Zootopia 2 came out in
Okay,
November.
all right.
This
well,
also came out in November.
sure.
It was at the same time.
Cool. I mean, all right. Well, great. That makes sense.
But yeah, it's just okay. Like if Smashing Machine won't get him there, him in a fucking women's wig from Dollar Tree sure is fucking gonna get him an Oscar nomination. Get out of here with that shit. So,
dude, it's perfectly okay to confuse release dates, Caleb. They release one Disney animation.
Yeah,
movie
no,
a year.
it's like because I was like, honestly, I believe you for a second because I'm like, honestly,
I genuinely
they just blend together, bro. Like I'm like, oh yeah, that happened last year. No, sorry, dude, that happened 3 years ago. What the fuck do you mean it can't?
Time is a funny thing.
So it's fine. Dan, you're fine. Caleb, stop being a fucking pill. Goddamn. But welcome back. But in terms of that, so that's like almost a decade. That's about 8 years. I don't think it's gonna take as long. So I would assume 4 years, maybe. Like it's probably gonna show up in like 2030, maybe like 2029, if they're really like fast tracking it. You know, so yeah, I think that's probably gonna be the case.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes sense. 2030
in terms of like, remember they're still writing it, and it takes a lot for the animation, all that.
Oh
shit.
yeah, no, absolutely. The other thing you gotta remember is this is something they mentioned in this article. Disney Animation, the current version of Walt Disney Animation, like the studio within Disney that makes these movies, because it's not a Pixar film, it's a Walt Disney Animation film. Like they make like Frozen, they made Moana, they make Zootopia, and you know, obviously Zootopia is also looking for probably a prequel considering how successful it was last year. So they only currently in their current iteration, if you go down in the article to talk about it, they only release one movie a year. Like Walt Disney Animation as of right now for the last several years, that seems to be the pattern. They only put out one movie a year. This year they're putting out Hexed, which comes out in that November holiday time frame. The last time they put out two movies in 1 year, I believe, was in 2016 when we got Zootopia and Moana. Speaking of Zootopia and Moana, so they have already got Frozen 3 scheduled for 2027. You got Hex this year. So like you were saying, the earliest we might see Moana 3 would be 2028, and then if that ends up being the year that they give to Zootopia 3, then certainly maybe not until 2029 or 2030 that we might get Moana 3. The other thing I want to point out, of all these live action remakes that they've been doing, like there's never been a Disney movie animated film where they did a live action remake while the actual animated movies were ongoing. So, and just some geeky guy, we'll get into the Supergirl stuff later, don't you worry. But the whole thing of like they're doing a live action Moana and then they'll do an animated Moana 3. Does that mean they're also gonna make a Moana 2 in live action? Because this is something that's kind of never happened
already
before.
Doing it. Might as well Disney do it too, right?
Yeah, but the difference is like it's been years since they already made the animated movies, right? And they're not making new animated How to Train Your Dragon. In this case, to have the animated series and the live action remakes running concurrently almost is, I don't think, something that Disney has ever done before. So it'll be interesting because, like, you know, Monique was saying she's already tapped out on Moana. I worry if there's enough, you know, runway for them to be able to put out so many of these movies, because effectively you'll be talking about 6 movies in total, 3 animated, 3 live action. I mean, I think, look, honestly, if this year's Moana, like the live action one, fails, then I feel like they're not gonna do any of the sequels in live action. But if it does, you know, 500 million or so, they might be tempted to. So I would be concerned about that, but I guess we'll wait and see. I mean, this is a lot of speculation. They might also just space them out. Like, I don't think they'll be in a rush to do Moana 2 in live action if they have a Moana 3 animated, coming up in a few years. So,
But Disney
maybe we're just
also
exaggerating.
really likes money,
Yeah.
and that's like guaranteed $2 billion between the two. So you know what?
But by the way, yesterday somebody on the show was suggesting that maybe, I think it might have been enterprising, that maybe Supergirl should have been released in August or September when there was more runway and less of these bigger blockbusters.
Oh, 100%.
Which
Lantern should have been released first.
Yeah.
Supergirl should have been released second, and then
Which I
Light
remember
Days in
that was the
October.
plan at one point. We didn't know the dates, but that was supposedly the plan, and then they flipped them. So,
Yeah.
and it's not like they have 3 Disney films out right now. It's just, they've got Moana coming up, but they had Toy Story 5. Illumination makes Minions, so it's not Disney, but it is a big animated movie.
No.
And then
Because
you
I
got
think
Odyssey
he
and
means Spider-Man. I think he means Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Toy
but that's
Story
like
5.
Sony, Spider-Man. I see what you mean. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
Sony / Marvel. So, yeah. Hey,
But
Kingsport
people,
Cal, looking
right,
forward to
it's
Batman
MCU,
Night.
so people were like, Marvel, Disney.
I get it. Yeah, because Marvel Studios makes the movie. Yeah, it's all good. I mean, releasing in August doesn't help, says Justin. It would have had a direct competitor in Brand New Day, gotten eaten alive. Fantastic Four and Superman capped each other last year. Supergirl can't compete with Spidey at all. That's true. I mean, that
But
is
it would have
true.
had
Like,
a
there's
better chance than being sandwiched
that's also
between
true.
2 4
Yes.
quadrant movies that have more
Yeah.
appeal and more IP attached to it and been
No,
around
you're right.
longer. So
Exactly.
rather than
Like,
just the one, like I feel like Supergirl could have survived like mid-August. Like
If it
'cause
came out
then-
like in week 3 of Spider-Man, I think at that
exactly. I was
point
just
it
gonna
can
say,
survive. It
give
could do
Spider-Man
that,
like
yeah.
2 weekends, Supergirl week
Mhm.
3, bam. It would have
Exactly.
it still probably wouldn't have made a lot of money, but it would have made more
Mhm.
money than it being in the wake of fucking the juggernaut of Toy Story. So,
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
No, I agree 100%. It's one of those situations where, like I said, it's a death by 1,000 cuts, and we'll get into some new information about that, later in the show when we get to DCU Daily, because it wasn't just, where they released it. There's a lot of other things that have basically, I don't know, like like Supergirl, it seems like just ultimately was a movie that didn't really stand a chance. And like I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, Warner Brothers DC knew this wasn't working. And I feel like us seeing them go through 4 different music composers for the movie was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the chaos that was going on with the movie behind the scenes. That doesn't always mean the movie's going to be bad. Hello, Jalen. You were with us for 4 hours that I was live yesterday, so thank you for joining us today. Hit the like button while you're here. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like, Supergirl was in trouble well before any one of us knew about it, and we'll talk about it in more detail later. Hello, Emo Nerd Girl. Thank you for tuning in. I feel like you change your profile photo every day. I appreciate the hustle, though. Appreciate the hustle. Anyway, John, let's keep going. We got one more Movie Talk Madness story to talk about. This one,
Yes.
Michael Mann related.
Yeah, we got Michael Mann up in this bitch because he too, it was kind of like, will it happen, will it not happen? And then finally they're like, oh, will they add these stars? And then finally, yes, it is 100% gonna happen, and filming is gonna be starting this year for, I believe it's gonna be a 2027 2028 release date. But Leo DiCaprio is playing the younger version of Vincent Hanna, who was played by Al Pacino in the first film, and then Christian Bale, due to the unfortunate death of Val Kilmer, Christian Bale will take the reins for Val Kilmer's character in Heat 2. So yeah, I think
is this give me a moment. So is this the idea, is that they pick up right where the other movie left off, and because those actors are either not around or
because
they're too old?
Do you remember the ending? Spoiler alert to everyone, but have you seen Heat? Do you remember the ending of Heat?
It's been years, and I can't tell you how exactly it ended.
What happened is essentially that entire crew, which was Robert De Niro's crew, they all got killed except Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer got away because his wife, Ashley Judd, gave him a code like, hey, the police are here, get out while you can.
Okay.
And so he leaves. He manages to get past the police blockade, so he lives. So what Heat 2 is about, it's Michael Mann and I think somebody else wrote a book that was a sequel, and then it got such positive feedback that they're like, fuck it, let's make it into a movie. So they're making it into a movie, and it's gonna be like a Godfather Part 2 situation, where it's gonna be part prequel with Vincent Hanna and like trying to find Robert De Niro's crew like way like before the events of the movie. At the same time, it's gonna be a sequel to what Chris, Val Kilmer's character, is doing after the events of Heat. So
I see.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. That makes sense. All right. I get it. Okay. That actually, yeah, that adds up.
I'm excited for
That
this. I
reminds
mean,
me.
Michael
Yeah.
Mann hasn't made a lot of great stuff recently, but you know what? I'm excited for it. I love Heat. I think Heat is a extremely excellent movie. I think this could be up there. I mean, it could go either way. It could go the way of Gladiator 2, or it could actually be in the realm of the first movie. I hope it's the latter. But yeah, I think this is going to be a fun time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that actually does sound a lot of fun. Yeah. Okay.
To be fair,
cool.
I do actually slightly prefer, like, if I had to choose, like, Heat is the better movie, but for me personally, I prefer Michael Mann's Thief with James Caan. So I don't know why just Thief just fucking scratched that itch way more than Heat for me, but like Heat 2 is arguably the better movie. Like it's definitely one of the greatest heist movies of all time, 100%.
Okay.
So yeah, this is very exciting.
I mean, it was on our list. Remember when we did we did a tier list Tuesday of heist movies, and yeah, Heat was on there. He was definitely on there. I know, even Nerd Girl, you do change your picture a lot. Just some geeky guys saying, imagine trying to rob a bank with Christian Bale. Half the crew quits because they can't.
Wait a minute. Hang on.
What?
They might have screwed this. Hang on. So, hang on. Oh, I my bad. I got that confused. I don't know why I misread it, but Bale is playing Vincent Hanna, Al Pacino, Leonardo DiCaprio is playing Val Kilmer's character. My bad. I got the two switched. I don't know how I got those switched. My bad. Like, because I remember reading it and I skimmed it. I must have gotten it confused. I was like, wait a minute, hang on. So that was my bad. Obviously you guys can read. I can't. So, you know.
Cool.
Anyway,
okay.
But this is going to be fun.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I'm looking forward. Where did this end up? Like, I forget. Like, what's the studio? Remember, there's a studio. So Warner Brothers didn't want to do this. Is this Amazon Prime? Or no, sorry, Amazon MGM. Are they the ones that picked it up? I forget. Somebody in the chat might know. Like, which studio is actually releasing this now? Because I know that Warner Brothers didn't want to do it because it was it was too expensive for what Michael Mann wanted for the budget. But they ended up going elsewhere, I think. So I'm trying to figure this out actually in real time. One of you guys might tell me. It might be Amazon MGM actually. Hello, Figure Drawing. I hope this movie rocks, but it seems weird to be in swap characters
like,
mode.
A spokesperson for MGM. Okay, so
that it is what it is. Okay. Yeah. That's the second movie that kind of like took over from another
play
studio.
Neil McCauley,
Highlander.
The Robert De Niro role in from the first film. A number of actresses are vying for the role of Charlene, originated by Ashley Judd, while other A-list names are circling the project.
I agree, Caleb, by the way.
So.
Hopefully it is more Top Gun Maverick and less Gladiator 2. Yeah, move to Amazon. I mean, Amazon, got Highlander from Lionsgate and then Heat 2. Amazon MGM is definitely trying to build that they're definitely trying to build that big franchise library, because they know the IP they got from Amazon MGM is good, but it's not like a lot of the stuff's from the 80s. You almost have to kind of start from scratch on some of those things, because you got stuff that isn't necessarily relevant or something that a lot of people, the younger audiences, recognize, like we have seen with Masters of the Universe. They're gonna have to like build that up from the ground up, and so they're sticking to it, which is fine. I appreciate that they're not just like, oh, it flopped, put it in the closet for the next 20 years. But as far as bringing in these other movies and prestige films, if they're going to build out an annual slate of like 10 to 15 films that are going to be big at the box office, then doing these kind of things, bringing in Highlander, giving it the money, and Heat 2, regardless of whether it works out or not, I think they're good moves for them as potentially one of the new big studios, and finally, putting some respect on MGM's name after decades of bankruptcy, coming out of bankruptcy, getting sold and bought, and sold for parts. So yeah, what did you say last night about Spider-Man? What did I say last night about Spider-Man? What are you?
I don't know.
Are
I
you
wasn't
asking?
here.
I was talking about how many. I mean, we were talking about it earlier that it might make $2 billion, like, and if that's what you're referring to. But yeah. I don't know if you got to be more specific. About Spider-Man Emo Nerd Girl, if you're, because I mean, I was live for like 4 hours last night, so like literally the show ended at was like 3 hours 55 minutes and some change I saw. um I really wish they marketed Masters as a brand new universe. I mean, I think they did the right thing by not doing that, because like you got to give yourself an out. It looks a lot worse when you go and do a full cast photo with the lead for every movie in your new dark universe, and when the first movie with Tom Cruise fails, you completely, like, take a left turn and say, "Oh, never mind." I think, like, as opposed to doing that, it's better to like have a movie fail and then just be like, "Okay, like we tried." And in this case, they're sticking with it, but if they decided not to, like, nobody would blame them because the movie didn't make a ton of money. So, Figure Drawing saying it is 100% myth that Pacino and De Niro were not on set together. They were. It was confirmed. Cool. Yeah, and Monique, MGM's big thing is their back catalog. It is their crown jewel, even though a lot of that back catalog has been sold off over the years. Like Warner Brothers has a ton of it that Ted Turner bought, which then got merged when Turner's company merged with Warner Brothers back in the day, or Time Warner as it was known. But they do still have a shit ton of stuff. They have a lot of good IP. It's just, I'm just saying, there's not a lot of awareness with younger audiences for that IP, so you can't just go in and be like, we're gonna appeal to the older people. I mean, you can, to the built-in audience, but the built-in audience is literally dying off. So like, like with Masters, you almost got to start from scratch if you're gonna like have it be a a lasting franchise in the 21st century. Heat 2 could be peak though, Steven. It could definitely be. Emo Nerd Girl saying, I said I watched the one where all the villains came back. Oh yeah, No Way Home. No Way Home is a great movie. Yeah, I think No Way Home is great. It's got $1.92 billion at the box office, and Brand New Day sort of like kicks off a new trilogy with Tom Holland. So, Justin saying, if 3 Spideys and 6 villains across 2 generations can't get Spider-Man to 2 billion, I doubt Brand New Day can do it. Regardless of quality, it will still be the number 2 movie of the year after Doomsday. Yeah, look, like I said, 2 billion may still be too high of a number for it to actually go for, but we'll see. It's possible. It all depends on the kind of legs it has. The fact that it's the last big blockbuster of the summer certainly helps, because if you look at the release calendar, there'll be movies coming out, but there's not going to be anything else that's going to truly try to, take over. Like Spider-Man might be the number 1 movie at the box office for like 5-6 weeks in a row potentially. So that does bode well for it. And so on that level, I mean, again, everything has to work. Like, if you're gonna get 2 billion, people have to keep wanting to go see it again and again and again. And you got to bring your friends. It's got to have great word of mouth. You got to have A minus, A plus cinema score. Like all those things. Rotten Tomatoes rating should be high. Audiences, the popcorn meter should be high. It's there shouldn't be any divisive ending or anything else like that. Those are all things that have to line up, and it's a lot. You're asking for a lot, which is why there's only 3 $2 billion movie ever. There's 2 Avatar movies that made 2 billion plus, and then there's the 1 Avengers movie. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, dude, Savage Hulk, I'm sure, is going to help bring in some of the box office. So let's see how that plays out. But anyway, John, let's keep going. I believe we are done with Movie Talk Madness. So walk us through MCU Weekly. We do have some Marvel stuff beyond Spider-Man to talk about today.
Yes, indeed. But the first one is actually comic-based news. It's for the Amazing Spider-Man number 1000 issue. How, more variant covers are revealed, including collaboration with Brand New Day artwork. But the landmark issue will feature 2 main covers, one from each of the current run's lead artists. Legendary artist John Romita Sr.
We'll get into that later.
John Romita Jr. Joins acclaimed illustrator Paulo Rivera for a stunning painted cover, while modern superstar Pepe Larraz delivers a striking traditional piece. Both artists are also contributing variant covers for the issue. So it will also feature a spectacular lineup of variant covers from one of the industry's most celebrated artists. Today, we have stunning pieces by Eric Larson, M.R. Garson, Julian Totino Tedesco, along with Marvel Studios' variant cover commemorating the release of Spider-Man Brand New Day in theaters on July. So let's see this, and I will say, this is looking good. I mean, this is definitely giving Andrew Garfield vibes, most definitely. That is.
It looks like Andrew Garfield.
It's
from
mainly the
Amazing
hair
Spider-Man
because
movie.
Andrew Garfield has very big hair. Like he nails it. It's just
he does. Yeah, no, I agree, 100%. I like it. It looks good. I like the cover. I mean, it's 1,000-ish. Yeah, this is a big deal. The Amazing Spider-Man. So, and I always keep saying those movies, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, don't get enough due. They were not as bad as some people, made them out to be. Like ultimately, I think I have a soft spot for the second one, but I think most people agree that the first one has aged quite well. And they both made a good amount of money. Like by today's standards, they both made over $700 million. Like most superhero movies today would kill for that. It feels like a lot of movies struggle for that. So yeah, I think it did quite well. And yeah, I'd love to see this in the comics form as well. Good for Marvel.
Yeah, and here you have like
this turns out.
The entire history. You got like, this definitely looks cool. Like you got like a lot of different artists for the Spider-Man side and for the Peter side, and then you got a lot of like.
I think MJ looks fine in bangs.
Just so much in regards to the history of Spider-Man. And then this one,
sight.
I like. It's definitely,
I like that too, yeah.
It has like a kitty kind of vibe to it, but I like it. It's kind of like traditional, but a little modern at the same time. You have this one, which is kind of has like a painted Alex Ross vibe a little bit, but like more cartoony and less realistic. This one is the Brand New Day one where it features Tom Holland Spider-Man. So very basic. It kind of has a New York vibe with like I Heart New York, I Heart Spider-Man. So I like that a lot too. So yeah, I like all these. All these are really good.
Yeah, they look fantastic. They look amazing. They look spectacular.
Say that again.
They're all reaching out like they're saying honka honka. Of course they are. Of course they are. Let's keep going.
Next up is Avengers 7, reportedly in the works of the Russos. Now the question is, and maybe Dan can answer this a hell of a lot better than me, because that kind of brings in like kind of the business side of things. But could it be Secret Wars Part 2, or is it just like, oh, the Russos are just helming another one since these are probably going to be very successful?
Okay, so I mean, look, these are rumors, so take them with a big grain of salt, but I think it's far less like, here's the thing, and we've talked about this before, especially about like splitting it into 2 movies, Secret Wars. I don't think they're gonna split it into 2. So what I think, if any of these 2 ideas are a possibility, I think what's more likely to be happening is that the Russo brothers will come back for a 7th Avengers movie. And the other thing that Kevin Feige finally woke up, smelled the coffee and the roses, and realized that the move to make Avengers saga capping movies was a fucking dumb idea, because then you can't do a banger of a movie that ages quite well like Avengers Age of Ultron. Like, you need those Avengers movies to kind of feel like the big crossover events. They shouldn't just, like, you can make them saga cappers, like, Infinity War and Endgame, but don't just use them for that. Like, these Avengers movies, what they do, like, it makes financial sense, right? Like, you make an Avengers movie, like, between, 5-6 other movies that you're doing in a particular phase, or whatever you want to call it. Marvel calls them phases. If you're having a slightly bad run, or if the last 2 out of 3 movies underperformed, you know that Avengers movie is a safe bet, because people love Avengers. Even if they're not following every other movie, they will come out for the Avengers crossover. So, because there's going to be some character or set of characters they're going to like, even if they don't like, a couple of them that had movies come out recently. So it just makes sense financially for them to go back to that, what they were doing early on, when after maybe a 2 or 3 solo or other character-based movies, you do an Avengers film, and it allows you to be able to have a safe, surefire bet at the box office. It also allows you to kind of have that little crossover thing, which people love in the comics, and clearly at the box office and at the movies. So that's, I think, the way to go about things. And I think that that Kevin Feige has said as much, that they're going to go back to that model. And then you could still do a big blow off end of a, saga Avengers movie, or two of them 10 years from now, 5, 8 years, however long it takes for them to get through the mutant saga. And that's fine too. So I think what's more likely to happen is that the Russo brothers will come back and they'll probably do the 7th Avengers movie, but it's not going to be, Avengers and, Secret Wars Part 2. Like, it's not going to be splitting that one into two pieces. I think Marvel wants to move on because you think about it, John. They're already working on an X-Men movie with Paul Schreier. They're already working on a Black Panther 3 with Chadwick Boseman. Not Chadwick Boseman. Sorry, Chadwick Boseman's passed away. I apologize, but I'm remembering. I'm forgetting the name of the director right now. The Black Panther director.
Ryan Coogler.
John. I'm blanking on it. Ryan Coogler. They got Ryan Coogler. Those are confirmed because Ryan Coogler and Paul Schreier have both talked about it publicly. They're working on those movies. Beyond that, there's potentially other ones as well, which we'll talk about in a second, with Phase 7. Oh, is it Jack Schreier? I thought it was Paul Schreier. Never mind, whatever. Anyway, the Schreier dude who's worked on...
You're probably thinking of
the
Paul
Thunderbolts
Schrader.
film. Yeah, but yeah, I just don't think it's going to be a situation where they need to do a third Avengers movie, because it doesn't need to be a 3-parter. They want to move forward into the X-Men era, and I think they've already got projects planned out and dated, so it's more likely if the Russo brothers do stick around, they're going to come back and do a 7th Avengers film, which will be just like an Age of Ultron crossover, but not like a saga capper. So, yeah, anyway, let's keep going. And you know what, Caleb, thank you for not making a comment, because sometimes you don't have nice things to say, so that's when you keep your mouth shut. But let's keep going, John. We got more news. Speaking of Phase
now
7,
in terms of going from Avengers 7 to Phase 7, every rumored Marvel Phase 7 movie is a sequel or a revival, and that could be a problem. So start with what we actually know, because it's less than the headline suggests. Marvel has staked out release dates running through 28 to 29, and every one of them is officially untitled. The industry read on what fills those slots is Fantastic Four 2, Black Panther 3, an X-Men movie, Doctor Strange 3, and Deadpool 4. So, there's all that. 2 of those are on the record. Ryan Coogler has confirmed Black Panther 3, and Jake Schreier has confirmed an X-Men reboot. The rest, including that rumored Sam Raimi return for Doctor Strange 3, is a mix of wish list and scooper chatter, so hold it loosely. But even taking the rumors at their word, the shape doesn't change. A sequel, a revival, a sequel. And the broader bench people keep floating Shang-Chi 2, Spider-Man 5, Blade. A Thunderbolts follow-up is more of the same. Even with the next Avengers after Secret Wars is reportedly the Russo brothers again, as we just talked about. Wherever you look on the slate, it's a name you already know. So... I can kind of see why it's like that, because if you look at Phase 4 and Phase 5, they see it as, we tried to introduce all these new characters and they all failed. So we're not going to do that again. We're just going to make sequels. And it's like, is that Marvel taking the wrong lessons? Absolutely, because, it is in their DNA for Marvel, DC, and the rest of Hollywood to learn the wrong lessons or never learn their lesson in regards to anything. So they see it as like, all these Phase 4, Phase 5 movies, they all failed, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, no, you just got to stop rushing this shit by assembly line and putting effort into your fucking movies, and not just have the weight of, it's an MCU movie, everybody's going to go fucking see it no matter how shitty it is, like you had for the past 20 years. So you have to try, and, it doesn't, because, look at, Quantumania. That sucked ass, and that was a sequel. So, and Shang-Chi, a lot of people say Shang-Chi is one of the best of Phase 4, Phase 5, and that was not a sequel. So, it's just try, just be passionate, be creative, but that's not exactly in Kevin Feige's vocabulary anymore. So
this article kind of goes into a few
pot.
other things. Look, they're talking about a lot, yes, they are doing a lot of sequels. Sheep Detectives is actually a really cute movie. I'm
love Sheep Detectives. It's so good. Yeah, it's the closest. I will say, a friend of mine actually mentioned this, how he said it's the closest we will ever get to a live action Pixar film. And honestly, I can kind of see it. And you know what? Great time.
Yeah, no, I hear you. here's what I was gonna say though. If you go back to, oh, I think one of my cats is in trouble. Anyway, talking about this Phase 7 situation, right? I see what this article is getting at. Oh, hey, Chimera, and hi, Stacy. Welcome on into the chat. Chimera saying, exactly so true. Shang-Chi is in a sequel and was a success. It would be a sequel. They waited too long to bring him back. I know they have, but you still got to do a second one. I hope they do. Justin Geeky guy saying, according to the script leak, Doom is a twist whom their heroes realized was a bad guy halfway through. Why would you trust a guy named Wad Doom? Yeah, it's like they're named Decepticons. Why did we think they were good guys? Like, you know? But anyway, that script, dude, that particular Avengers Doomsday leak has been around for months, and it just recirculated again. And it's not new in that sense, by the way. And it is a little concerning if that's all this movie is going to be. I have a feeling it's not exactly right. Like there's some, even if there's nuances and other details that
so
change.
I'm looking at phase 4 right now. I just wanted to like double check my hypotheses, because you got to do the scientific method and all that. So so in terms of phase 4, because Far From Home, that's like a weird one. Sometimes it counts as phase 3, sometimes counts as phase 4. Wikipedia counts it as phase 3, so I'm not counting that one. So in terms of phase 4, the first 3 were original movies. You had Black Widow, which was kind of a failure, but we can't really blame that outside of the fact it was only a fucking year after COVID. So, it was kind of a failure. It should have happened like 5-6 years beforehand, but that's neither here nor there. Shang-Chi, which was a pretty good success. A lot of people seem to like that. It was mixed to positive, I would say. And then Eternals, nobody fucking liked that shit. So, like, that was considered a failure, I guess. And then pretty much the back half of phase 4 were all sequels. No Way Home, which made $2 billion. Then you had Multiverse of Madness, which almost made $1 billion or more. It was like 800, 900, right? Around there for
it literally came up within 50 million of $1 billion. Like, Multiverse of Madness.
Thor: Love and Thunder was kind of. I think it made money, but it was like a failure in terms of the critics because it was a horrible, horrible movie. And Wakanda Forever was mixed to positive. So, like, for the most part, you had 2 failures out of 3 for the originals, and then you had 3 successes out of 4 for So it's like, it's kind of like you kind of see the sequels as more effective than the original films. And then in terms of phase 5, which had Quantumania, Guardians 3, Marvel's Deadpool and Wolverine, Captain America Brave New World, and Thunderbolts. Well, in terms of like the sequels, it's actually kind of mixed because Quantumania sucked and Marvel's was a failure. But then you have James Gunn finishing his trilogy with Guardians 3, and that was a success. And then Deadpool and Wolverine made a fucking $1 billion, and that was Deadpool 3 / Deadpool spinoff, because Ryan Reynolds was like, I don't count it as Deadpool 3. I'm like, well, people count it as Deadpool 3, so shut the fuck up. So there's that, and then after that, you have Brave New World and Thunderbolts, which were both, didn't meet the mark box office wise, and you had one that was mixed to negative, and then one that was mixed to positive. So, it's just kind of not great. Like, it's a little bit more even than phase 4, but I think my point still stands. You have, I think, more sequels and sequel successes than more original film successes. So I think because of that, they see the sequel thing as more successful, and they're gonna go with that rather than try to do original stuff. And they're like, oh, I don't know these characters; these aren't gonna do well. So I don't know. That's just my theory, and hey, that's just a theory, film theory.
Well,
thanks for watching.
Yeah. Well, look. Here's what I'm gonna say. Let's take a look. Where's the article? I don't know. Can we actually see from MCU Phase 7 movies? There might be a graphic somewhere of this. I don't know if you can pull up an image. The potential MCU Phase 7 that they might have lined up, which again, like some of it is it's just all speculation, because people want to see like a million different things, but we know we're getting an X-Men movie. So if you just go back to the article for a moment, like if you go up on the article, they're talking about the list. I think let me kind of read off what Justin was saying for a moment. The two movies penciled in to follow Secret Wars are the X-Men movie in 2028, which is going to introduce the new team, probably the OG team version of characters. So you're going to leave out Wolverine, you're going to leave out some of the big hitters, but you're going to start off with like the core team, and then you're going to slowly build up. Then you got the Black Panther 3, which is going to like
doom the universe for Haley Atwell. So 100%, not going to lie.
Yeah, but okay, so but like the whole Black Panther 3, I think X-Men, those are two pretty much, confirmed. And I think that those are two also, not only they're safe bets, you need to establish a new X-Men team. I think that's moving the thing forward. And then Black Panther 3 is obviously like capping out a trilogy of movies that, even when they're not as good, they will make a ton of money and people love him. I mean, both of the movies so far have been good. The first one was better for me than the second, but I can't wait to see, like, especially if they're going to have a new, like the younger T'Challa aged up, which the rumor is that's what they're doing in Secret Wars. So, and you want to do a second Fantastic Four movie. This the Marvel's first family. And then, of course, you've got Doctor Strange 3, because why would you not do a Doctor Strange 3 eventually? For Deadpool, I feel like is the one that's probably the most iffy, considering how Ryan Reynolds has talked about the character. It's more likely that he's in a bit of bigger, maybe like a team movie. It's unlikely to be a Deadpool focused film. So you look at those, and then maybe you add like they might, they'll likely do, I hope they do a Shang-Chi too, because Shang-Chi was the most successful movie Marvel put out in the pandemic, and it deserves a sequel however long it takes to get there. We know Simu Liu is still part of the equation. He's in Avengers Doomsday, so I hope we get another one. We know Sony is going to make at least 2 more of these Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, so those are coming. And whether they figure out Blade or whether they figure out the Midnight Suns, we know one of those things is eventually going to happen, especially if Marshall Ali finally debuts in one of the upcoming Avengers films. And then you've got, of course, the Thunderbolt sequel, the new Avengers. So we'll see, depending on where those characters are at the end of the two Avengers movies. All of these movies, for me, it's not about like, oh, all of them are sequels and spin-offs. But I'm like, dude, what the fuck do you expect? It's the MCU. Like, and then you're talking about like they're not introducing any new characters. They're gonna introduce a whole new set of characters in X-Men. Yeah, you've seen them before, but like this is a new X-Men team. This is the MCU X-Men team. And Shang-Chi deserves a sequel. Doctor Strange 3 is warranted just based on this previous movie's box office. And Black Panther 3 is warranted just on the 2 previous movies' box office, not to mention, Ryan Coogler has done a fantastic job. Spider-Man, is Spider-Man. Fantastic Four was good enough. You want more Fantastic Four. They're going to be a big part of the next, generation of heroes. None of these things bother me. I think this is a really, really strong slate. They've got a nice mix here of characters that are still new to the MCU and characters that are big, confirmed heavy hitters like Black Panther, Spider-Man, and we'll see how well X-Men does. But I'm like, this to me feels like the perfect slate. This is the Marvel saying, okay, we're back in the game, going for quality over quantity. They're probably going to do 2 to 3 a year. I don't think we're going to see any year where we're going to get to see 4 Marvel movies. And then as far as introducing lesser known characters, this is what we talked about with the DC side of things. They shouldn't have made Supergirl as a second DCU movie. It was too big of a risk. They spent too much money on it, and obviously the worst possible case scenario has played out for it, and that sucks because now you don't have, I was talking about it for 2 hours last night, it doesn't give you the runway that you would have had if you went with safe characters that made a shit ton of money, and all of a sudden the powers that be were like, you had an amazing Batman movie and you got a Superman movie that everybody loved. Do your thing, James Gunn. But instead, they did a Superman movie that slightly underperformed, still was really well received, and overall was a great success. But then they shit the bed with Supergirl. And now the DCU might be in a bit of trouble. Like they don't even have a Batman yet. So like, then we don't have a Wonder Woman yet. Like there's a lot of pieces that are missing, especially with the idea of like if it's stuff that is not directed by James Gunn. Now on the Marvel side of things, their problem was they went too deep in their catalog for Phase 4. They left out a lot of the big characters, and then we did get to see those characters. They were too intertwined into the multiverse storylines, and that almost took over and kind of went, like, for example, you go to the second Doctor Strange movie, it does very loosely feel like a sequel to the first Doctor Strange. And I know it's hard because he went through 2 Avengers movies where he got, snapped away and then snapped back in. Hello, Sanju. So they are going to make a sequel to Fantastic Four. But like it's like that thing with the Guardians movies. The third movie felt very different than the first 2 because there were 2 Avengers movies in the middle. So like, these Doctor Strange movies don't feel very interconnected. I think what we need to do is make the third Doctor Strange feel like it's more down to the core of the character and less about what's going on in the MCU and more about maybe wrapping up Stephen Strange's story and giving him a happy ending or something like that. Yeah, like it's just one of those things where Marvel is not playing it around anymore. Like and like Figure Drawing is saying, a lot of these movies are gonna make $500 million or more. I can already say, like, if Black Panther 3 is good, it's gonna be $1 billion movie. Spider-Man 5 is already a guaranteed $1 billion movie. Shang-Chi 2 probably gonna makes 500 million. If Doctor Strange 3 is as big as the second Multiverse of Madness, the Multiverse of Madness was 50 million off $1 billion. So there's that. Then the X-Men movie, if it's really, really good and people love the casting and the portrayals, then the X-Men movie may not make $1 billion, but it might do 700 to 800 million, and then the second one could do that. Not to mention they don't have currently, any of the big hitters like Wolverine. Maybe Storm gets left out. Maybe you don't even cover a ton of Professor X and Magneto. You've got these characters. You could do Wolverine and introduce him in his own solo movie. Like, dude, Marvel's most popular characters have not been the Avengers. And yes, they've dominated the headlines over the last 15 years in the MCU, but Marvel is just, as a hello PLO, they're just getting into their peak era in terms of having the peak IP in their locker, which was the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man finally take center stage as part of the MCU. And we may get to a point where we're like, fuck the Avengers. Like, Steve Rogers is not there. Iron Man is dead, especially if they don't reboot that stuff. And the Hulk is eventually going to get old because Mark Ruffalo is getting old. And, Thor, like, eventually Chris Hemsworth's going to say, okay, I'm actually done this time. So who are the Avengers? They're basically the X-Men and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. So, like, or they're lesser known characters, like you got Shang-Chi and a few other guys like that. So I think Marvel is going to do just fine. I think this to me is a good slate, and you add in a few lesser known characters here and there. Like Midnight Suns is going to be a risky move because you're going to be using lesser known characters mixed in with somebody like Blade and Moon Knight who already had a TV show. That, I think, is a good risk to take. Like, this is the kind of slate that I think, to me, says Marvel is not playing around anymore. And I wish like DC would do more of this, because too much experimentation at a time when the genre is no longer, a home run automatic $500 million for every decent movie genre. And the younger crowd, the Gen Zers, are not as interested in superhero movies as like millennials are, which we'll talk about later too. It's a situation where you got to go with the big hitters. If you're spending the money, you gotta like go with the safe bets. You gotta put your Batman, your Superman, your Wonder Woman, your Justice League, your Green Lantern, your Aquaman out front. The Flash. Like, you can't just be like, oh, let's do more Creature Commandos, those characters that nobody watches, so we put it on YouTube for free. We can't do Peacemaker, sure, but you can't make Peacemaker and Chet make the center of your universe. You can't keep doing more Suicide Squad movies. You can't keep doing those lesser known B, C, D, F tier characters. You got the golden tier characters out there. So I think this, to me, is like, thank you, Marvel. You have learned your lesson that Phase 4 you went too deep, and that was something that partly was Bob Iger's thing. They were like, we got so many of these characters, we got such a deep catalog. Well, I'm sorry, Bob Iger, but that deep catalog did not really work out all that well, did it now? And you went back to the Russo brothers, and you're doing the thing where you're bringing all these like big high characters back. So it is what it is, though, John. It's the business of Hollywood. What can I say? Like, in a time where the genre is contracting, like, you got to go with the safe bets. So, and yeah, by the way, it is.
That's why it's like, I think like having 2 films a year works, because you have your big movie and then your experimental movie. That's why you got to do like, have a Batman movie and then do the Supergirl movie. You have a Wonder Woman movie and then maybe like this Clayface thing. So, it's a give and take. Like, okay, you're going to have the big money maker and then go for the more experimental thing. So like if the experiment works, you take the risk, you take that jump and it actually works, then okay, cool.
Exactly.
This can work. But if it doesn't, it's like, okay, well, Wonder Woman made $1 billion, so it's fine. And that's what I think they should do. And then maybe you can up that to 3 and then have a big moneymaker, and then maybe one like mid-tier movie where it's like, oh, it could make a lot of money, but it could also fail. And then another experimental. Because, this is James Gunn, you need to hire me, bro. You need to fucking hire me. You need to get me in here. I'll clean all your shit off and all that shit. And boom, there we go. I got you, bro. I got you. And then like, once the chode with lips comes in, then I can like be like, all right, I'm done here. But you know, then I'll sort you out, buddy. I'll sort you out. You know, I got you.
Yeah, no, I think it's just one of the, like I hate to be like, I feel like I've been ragging on DC all week long, and I have, and rightfully so. And I feel like the report today is only like further like adding to the like, you know, like the righteousness of all that, you know, ranting. But like, yeah, with Marvel, like you said, go back to the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie that came out. Was it Phase 2? They called it. Like that,
Yeah.
the whole Iron Man trilogy had already been released by the time we got a Guardians movie. I remember the same summer that we got Guardians of the Galaxy, a few months before Guardians, we got Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And so it was like a banger summer. And I think Ant-Man came out either between those two or after it.
Because that's
so,
the
like,
thing, like, but that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. Look at those 2
Exactly.
years, 2014 and 2015.
Yeah.
2014, you had the safe bet. It's like,
Hey,
okay,
Andrew.
maybe not everybody loved Captain America
Right.
first, but I really liked it. It still made a good
Yes.
amount of money. It still had relatively positive reviews. And so you got the sequel, and then that was the safe bet. Okay, you got, you know, like, you know, you have Bucky coming back, you got the Winter Soldier storyline,
Right.
you got him in modern day, you got a lot of good themes going on, boom, 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 some good action, poorly shot, but Russo brothers don't know how to shoot action to save their lives. So, you know, but
I
Winter Soldier,
liked it actually.
great movie, considered one of the best of the MCU, arguably the best according to some people. Boom. And then it's like, got this weird fucking Guardians thing. Like, what the fuck is this shit? Well,
I
it's like,
remember reading
okay,
about it. Like,
if
yeah.
this fails, then like, okay, we got Captain America: Winter Soldier, and then it fucking became huge. Then look at 2015, like Avengers. Okay, we got an Avengers sequel. We're bringing in Ultron. We got James motherfucking Spader, the man who kills it at any villain role as your main villain. Got Joss Whedon coming back. Boom, you got Avengers. You got Vision in there. You got all these cool things. Boom. This was your safe bet. And then it turns out that wasn't, because apparently everybody fucking hated Ultron, yet everybody loved Ant-Man. And that was like, that had production problems. That was in development hell for a while. So that was the more experimental bet. And that turned out to be the one that everybody loved. And now looking back, you know, nobody really cares about either, but that's beside the point. But like, look at those 2 years. You had the big safe bet with Captain America and Avengers. Then you had the weirder experimental movie. Yeah, Ant-Man is like, isn't totally experimental, but like, it's weirder than, you know, Avengers, where it's like guy who uses ants and can shrink. I'm like, how the fuck are you gonna make that work? So, and they made it work, and people liked it. So, you know, it's just like, that's the thing, because then if it works, then it's like, oh shit, James Gunn, here's an entire trilogy. Whoops, I knocked my camera over. But here you go, James Gunn, here's your entire trilogy, because this fucking Guardians thing worked, and you managed to give us the best Star Wars movie that we ourselves can't even make in our Disney Lucasfilm division. So, you know, there's that too. So it's like, that was an experimental bet. It was based on this thing that nobody really knew, nobody really remembered, nobody really cared about. And then boom, it fucking became a huge hit. Boom, you get a trilogy. And then Ant-Man, all right, cool. This turned out to be a huge hit that also got a trilogy that kind of got worse and worse as time went on. But hey, it was still a risk. So it still warranted something, and they still made relatively good money. So it just goes to show that it's like, that's what to do. Like, I understand James Gunn doesn't want to do the same things as Marvel. You don't have to do the same things as Marvel, but like, you gotta at least gather some of the lessons that Kevin Feige learned. Not a lot of them, because, you know, MCU was just, it was the epitome of lightning in a bottle, because they were fucking flying by the seat of their pants. Like, I would say the reason that the MCU is successful nowadays, 90% of it is complete and utter dumb fucking luck. It is a miracle that the MCU became as successful as it was. It really was. It really, because all the things that you think they meticulously planned, all the post credit, the Incredible Hulk, all of that was fucking throwing shit at the wall to see if it fucking worked, and it magically did. pretty much every time.
Well,
So
okay, but like I'll also like here's the thing, John. Though, like you got to give him some credit in this. Like Kevin Feige is like I don't think it comes up very often anymore, but he has admitted in the past that like, and then in other documentaries, even other people who were involved at the time, like like Esposito, well, that's his name, right? Like he's been around and doing these movies with Kevin Feige from the beginning, right? Like I forget the name of the other person who got let go a couple of years ago because she did another movie for a different studio. Victoria Alonso, I think. But like Joe Esposito, and it has been his like right hand man. He's still there. Brad Vinderbaum came in a few years later. I mean, James Gunn was gonna be his right hand man for a while too. But anyway, the point what I'm trying to make is, I think it's not a secret that Kevin Feige, what they were hoping for in those early days of the MCU is, let's put out these movies. Let's do Iron Man. Let's do the end credit post credit scene. We'll try to connect the dots. Let's see how much and all of a sudden audiences are like orgasming in movie theaters because they're like, oh my god, they're gonna go to the Avengers. And then they were like, okay, well let's do Captain America. We're working on a Thor movie, and most of those movies were made before Disney bought Marvel, so they were essentially independently producing these at Marvel Studios. They were an independent studio, and the risk kept paying off. And then we got to a point where like, all right, we're gonna do the crossover. Let's see how this works. Never been done before, and they kept taking risks. And you know what? It wasn't like those movies just became successful out of just sheer luck. There was talented people making things that the audience had clearly wanted but hadn't seen yet, and that helped them get there. Now the thing was, Marvel was limited, like to your point, Caleb, like DC has Batman, DC has Superman. DC does not have any of those rights issues that Marvel had for that whole era until Disney bought the part of Fox, and then eventually now we got the Spider-Man deal. We're talking about MCU's upcoming phase and how that compares to the DC side of things, Justin. So basically, like, Marvel did all of those things. They put Iron Man up front and center, Captain America, Thor, and Hulk, because while some of those characters were popular, some of them, like Captain America and Iron Man, nobody gave a shit before those movies came out. Hulk and Thor were popular, but not popular enough that other studios paid for the rights in the 90s when Marvel was going bankrupt. So they didn't have all the premier IP. They didn't have Spider-Man. They didn't have the X-Men. They have them now. They didn't have Fantastic Four. So Marvel took those risks and they worked out. But DC doesn't need to take those risks because DC has Batman, DC has Superman, and obviously Superman has been front and center so far. But I just think, like, again, without getting too deep into DC stuff until we get to DCU Daily, I think the problem DC has been running into with this new, and again, it's a little early still. I feel like we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But like James Gunn's the slate they announced a few years ago, I was like, sure, you have a Batman movie in there. But now that Batman movie still doesn't have a production date, we still don't know how far along it is in the pre-production stage. They're not even pre-producing it. Like, they're still writing the movie. Like, pre-production means you are building sets, you're doing casting, you're working on costumes, you're hiring, your crew and stuff. They're not even that far along. Instead, we're getting a second Superman featured movie and maybe a third feature after that they already have an idea what they want to do with it. So why leave The Flash, Green Lantern, like Wonder Woman on the sidelines this long? Like, Marvel did it because, Disney Marvel did not have the rights to Spider-Man at the time. They did not have the X-Men. That's why they put those other characters front and center, and they did a good job. They made good movies. They weren't like everything wasn't a super home run, but people wanted to see those movies, and therefore the floor on the box office was higher. Like, you could make more money by default. So even a movie that is just good enough was going to do well, and the cumulative effect of them once you get the crossover in an Avengers film was the ultimate payoff. And so Kevin Feige made a string of great decisions, as well as his team. And Kevin Feige's always been known to be very closely involved in the post-production process of his movies. And currently Pam Abdi over at Warner Brothers also does this, and people call it studio interference only when it doesn't work out. So yeah, I mean, what Marvel did is DC's not in the same situation. So I think, like, it's a false comparison because DC has access to all those big characters right off the bat. So I think it's by choice that so far James Gunn and Peter Safran have not focused on this. And that, of course, so far, and with Supergirl, it hasn't worked out because, they went with a character that obviously was not mainstream enough. And, this is why we're like, we need to get back to doing movies about those bigger characters. That's the one thing the DCEU did right. They rushed it, but they brought the Batman and the Wonder Woman into that universe as fast as they could. Hello, Sean, Christopher. The 2017 theatrical release of Justice League grossed 661 million. This is why superhero movies are tanking. If the movie's not good, it will tank. I mean, 661 million is still more than Superman and Supergirl made. So, but still, yes, by today's standards, yes. And I know they're making a Lantern show, but I feel like that Lantern's show could have been a movie and should have been a big cosmic, like, effects heavy movie,
and not have Tom King or Damon Lindelof.
Because remember, this is the other argument, right? And again, we're kind of getting derailed. So after this next bit, we got to get back to what we were talking about before with more Marvel stuff. But one thing that I was recently thinking about with Supergirl, you got to first introduce, and we talked about this. Remember, we talked about it with Lanterns months ago. And hello, and by the way, Andrew, definitely do hit the like button if I see you in the chat. We got Lois in the chat. Hello, Lois. So we talked about it when the Lanterns trailers were coming out. One problem that we have potentially with the Lantern stuff is that we haven't had a definitive cinematic iteration of Lanterns. Like we have gotten many iterations of Batman. Some of them you could prefer. For some people, Michael Keaton is definitive. For some people, Christian Bale is. But, there's been enough of them that there's like a definitive, this is Batman. And then everything else is people judge relative to it. The Dark Knight could be that, right? It's probably the best Batman movie ever made. And that's not just me talking about it. But like even the Batman is fantastic. And it's very different from the Dark Knight. Superman, we still go back to the Christopher Reeve version. That's the definitive iteration for everybody, or for most people. Or like if you are much younger, you might think of Man of Steel. So, or like just Man of Steel is an example of like you had a definitive version of Superman. So you try to deconstruct it and give us a alternate version of it. It's okay. Like for example, Tobey Maguire's character, a version of Spider-Man, was in a lot of ways not quite the comic book version of Peter Parker, but it felt definitive for a lot of people. It was the Spider-Man of a generation. So when they did a different version of him with Andrew Garfield, which was like a less mainstream version, even in the comics, the Amazing Spider-Man series was not like, the core Spider-Man, series. You could do that. What they did with Supergirl is we have never seen a definitive version of Supergirl that aligns with the original conceit of the character. And instead they went in a completely different direction that kind of seeks to a little bit like deconstruct the character. And I think that's where they ran into the problem again, because you can't make that first iteration, the first big iteration, be that, alt version or like a non-mainstream version that's partly deconstructing the character. Like Supergirl doesn't feel very heroic in a lot of the movie. And I get like that's the point, and that's what the Tom King comic is about. But I'm saying do the Tom King comic adaptation once you already have established Supergirl as Supergirl. And it's one of those, it's to me, that's a problem. Like that's part of the problem with Supergirl. But anyway, I think it's hockey pads, not pants, but thank you for the reference, you nerd girl. It's pads. But I digress, John. What gives you the right? I'm not wearing hockey pads. Anyway, let's get back to talking about Marvel, because I feel like
because we have Boomerang to talk about. Yeah, because apparently Destin Daniel Cretton gave us a good look at Boomerang in the Hands leader. So yeah, look at that beaut right there. Look at that loveliness right there. Very nice, very nice. Don't these look nice, Dan?
I like the look of the character. I mean, I'm okay with it. I mean, Boomerang's probably gonna be in like 5 shots in the movie. Getting back to Marvel. Do you recognize the actor that's the leader of the Hand? Is that just the leader of? Because we were thinking like this is gonna be connected to some street level,
I don't
maybe Elektra or something. But obviously Elektra, that's not Elodie Young. So whoever that is, I guess we'll find out. But hey, I like the costumes. I'm sure the jacket is not part of the costume. It's just cold, from when they were filming it. Yeah, the other Boomerang, Captain Boomerang.
And then, apparently we got a Lego bust of Doctor Doom.
Yeah,
look at that beaut right there. Look at that. Ain't that look nice? And then we got a bit of a Lego minifigure for Doctor Doom as well. You got the shoulder pads, not the hockey pads, but the shoulder pads. And then we got a little bit of From Endgame to Doomsday, a Marvel Studios visual dictionary, Avengers, Allies, and Foes. And nobody's going to pick this up because nobody cares about the MCU from Endgame to Doomsday. But yeah, we got, all these little artworks and whatnot. And yeah, cool. Great. Anyway, we spent too much time on MCU Weekly, even though we didn't really spend time on MCU Weekly. But we still have we still have Disney stuff to talk about, because now we're going to Star Wars. Remember Star Wars? Yeah, good times. The ninth Visions, which is their what if anthology kind of show that some people like. Some people, honestly, most people don't talk about it because it's the only stuff that gets talked about is when Star Wars is really bad, and I've heard from the 3 people that watch the show that it's actually halfway decent. So of course nobody talks about it. But Star Wars Visions presents the Ninth Jedi trailer promises Star Wars fans a must-see adventure. So it's going to be available in both English and Japanese. A sneak peek debuted at the Los Angeles Convention Center as part of the Anime Expo of 2026. Where supervising director Kenji Kamiyama, director Shunsuke Tada, and then producer Hitoshi Ito were on hand to hype up the Ninth Jedi. Part of an all-new Star Wars Visions Presents banner, which will be used to tell longer-form Star Wars Vision stories. Imagine Marvel special presentation, but for Star Wars Visions. So it's Elseworld stuff, or stuff that's smaller, but it's it's longer than a TV episode, but not as long as a movie. The limited series picks up not long after the events of the Vision shorts, The Ninth Jedi and The Ninth Jedi Circle of Hope. In the new series, La Kara continues to train in the ways of the Jedi under Margrave Juro. Kara goes on an epic journey of self-discovery as she and Juro's small fellowship of Jedi in training embark on a quest to save her father. If I had a nickel for every character named Kara that goes on an epic journey of self-discovery in 2026, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. But here we go. Very nice. I mean, I'm not going to watch it, but for the people that enjoy it, I hope you like it. And yeah, this could be a good time.
I like to look at this and Star Wars Visions being its own little banner now. I like it. I like this this feels like a Dave Filoni move, right? This definitely doesn't feel like this was something that was if this is the first of maybe several initiatives of how Dave Filoni's changing, how Star Wars is going to be, at least on television side. I think this is good. I like this. And I'm looking forward to seeing what to do with it. Look, this kind of animation, there's certainly a big, audience for it. So I can't wait to see, what, how this does, and then, what other projects they might have in the pipeline. So yeah.
Nice. But that's it for TVTalk Terror. Not a lot, but a little bit. So, yeah. But now we move on to something quicker, and that is indeed our Quickens. So let's
do it.
Get into it. First things first, probably Dan was going to be upset about this, but Jodie Foster describes F1 as a movie made by AI at Aspen Ideas Fest. I don't say this disparagingly, though. The Oscar winner sat down with former Sony chief Michael Linton for a session titled Who Owns the Future of Hollywood. Naturally, the conversation covered artificial intelligence, that Foster gave her take on how it's being used.
Yeah, so basically, I read the whole article, and there's a paragraph where they basically tell you exactly what she said in detail. She's not... Here's the thing. Jodie Foster has been, outspoken in the past. Here, she's wrong, because I think it was one of those situations where we were always look, we do this on the show sometimes. We'll try to come up with a good analogy, we'll take up the wrong example in terms of maybe it doesn't quite fly as far as you thought it would. This is an example of that, because she was implying that, F1 seems to follow this formula where everything plays out a certain way, and then, at the end of the movie, it's I don't think she was implying that they were using AI to extensively, do shots and sequences in the movie. We have talked about in detail how the VFX were done, how they were embedded within F1, the actual racing series, for several years, and Lewis Hamilton was part of the process and was an executive producer. The movie wasn't made by AI. I think she was making a point about how these days everybody, and even then I feel she's off the mark. I'm what the fuck do you think Jodie? Look, she probably has been in read more scripts than either of you and I have ever read, but at the same time, I'm there's a difference between saying, that script was written by ChatGPT versus that script was written by one of a million writers in Hollywood who all follow the same formula that they learn in film school. Because she does talk about that. She mentions how everybody seems to follow the formula you're told to use in college to write a 3-act structure story. But I'm like, what the fuck does that have to do with AI? Like, AI didn't invent that formula. And there's certain fundamentals about how you write a movie that do it for that with that 3-act structure because it works. It's not even a Hollywood thing. It goes way back to even the days of Shakespeare and other kinds of media. It just, storytelling structure doesn't mean the same thing as AI. I think she was trying to make a point, but she completely missed the mark. So I'm like there's a difference here. There's a difference. It's like, and using F1 in an example, whatever example she would have used, she wasn't even talking about generative AI really. I think she started making a point, made the wrong example, and clearly, AI uses formulas, but so do the millions of people, kids that go to film school get told this is the way you write a 3-act structure movie, and then if they're writing that using that formula, that's not something AI invented, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm I was reading this and I'm I don't even care if she was disparaging F1, which she says she didn't want to. She was trying to make a point and she completely missed the mark. So I'm sorry, but
that's
was
the
just
vibe I'm getting from this. So let's move on.
It's just what are you talking about? What are you talking? Somebody should have said that to
somebody
her
needs to
stage.
take their dimension.
What are you talking about?
But TV ratings, U.S. World Cup match hits all-time high for soccer in America. The American men's victory over Bosnia and a word I can't pronounce draws more than 24 million viewers in early Nielsen ratings. Fucking. My dad was watching the Argentina match earlier. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And the fact that it was neck and neck, it was kept going tie. I'm like, damn, that's crazy, bro.
Dude, anyway. That game was. I mean, the fact that Cape Verde played them that tight is wild to me. I don't. It blows my mind. I'm that might be. I'm I know Cape Verde is out, but I'm the next team that Argentina faced should be taking notes because Argentina looked vulnerable. Even though they adapted, and that's the identity of a champion, that you adapt and then you're able to still get through. Sometimes you gotta win ugly, but I was if I was a team that was gonna play Argentina coming up in the tournament, I'd look at how they performed against Cape Verde and be they've got some weaknesses we can target. So anyway, let's keep going.
But next up, apparently the top grossing movie of all time on July 4th is in fact Transformers. So
yeah,
that's
the OG
cool,
Michael Bay Transformers 2007. The
Bayhem. When in doubt, it's always Bayhem.
So Universal, Paramount, and Sony tend to release a lot of movies. Turns out this time of year, so you got multiple Jurassic Park, Jurassic World.
Yeah, the only you had the last time Warner Brothers did, it was Terminator 3, and then you had fucking Sound of Freedom over there. But yeah, it's just it's
that's
impressive.
Universal,
actually. Universal, Sony, Universal, Sony, and then Paramount again. So it's
now these aren't adjusted for inflation, but even then, Jurassic World Rebirth were just last year, right? So yeah, the OG 2007 Transformers. This is talking about specifically July 4th. They did talk about later in the article 5-day box office, 3-day, and that gets tricky because July 4th isn't on a Thursday every year, so it might be on a Wednesday, it might be on a Sunday. So the amount of people that go to the movies will vary, but. Hey, the 2007 Transformers movie, regardless of how you perceive the rest of that franchise, I like those movies overall. I even like the Age of Extinction. I just thought the 5th one was terrible. But the first one is, for a lot of people, still one of the best Transformers movies. You can't tell me you weren't jizzing in your pants when, Optimus Prime and Bumblebee transformed in that movie. Transformers have, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Kingsport Cal, but Transformers have never looked more badass than when Michael Bay was directing Transformers movies. Everything that has come since has looked inferior. And the Bumblebee movie was good. I liked it. But let's be honest, Transformers 1, sorry. The Beast movie, whatever they call that bullshit, terrible. That was Michael Bay light. They were trying to do Michael Bay without Michael Bay, and Michael Bay's back in the foray. He's working on a new Transformers movie.
They're probably not going to make money either, even though every Transformers fan was like, "Yes, Transformers 1, this is what we want," and then nobody fucking saw it. And then now they're bringing back Michael Bay, and every Transformers fan wants to put a fucking gun in their mouth. So But what are
Well,
you
they're
gonna
doing
do?
multiple ones, so I mean, I feel like they're gonna not. It's not just Michael Bay's upcoming. There's like another 2 projects they've got in the works, so they're attacking the problem from different angles, I guess, if you could call it that.
Anyway.
So.
But apparently we're getting a new Halo MMO from Xbox. and it
Kale,
was
why don't you
reported
shove
being-
your aura up your ass? I don't even like that term, like freaking Gen Z aura. Like, what the fuck does aura farming actually mean? Anyway, new Halo MMO from Xbox. Yeah, cool. I don't know.
Got
This is what
leaked.
you think,
Okay,
John.
cool. Whatever.
I
Don't really
I
care.
Don't really care.
L honors the late James Vanderbeek after final on-screen role. As we all know, James Vanderbeek passed away earlier this year, and apparently he was in.
This was good to
he's
see.
in the Legally Blonde prequel show that nobody asked for, but it was nice that they could honor him with that. So.
No, I like
Nice.
this. This is good. It was kind of what was the horror movie? Was it the last Saw movie? I forget like who's the actor that passed away, and it was the last on-screen appearance. Like it came posthumously.
Tony Todd.
Tony Todd. Yeah, I'm like this is feels similar to me, and
He wasn't
I'm
in
glad
Saw.
that,
He was in Final Destination.
Final Destination. That's what it was. Anyway, it's the wrong horror movie. Yeah, I know aura is a word. I just don't like the Urban Dictionary. Like aura farming just feels like a dumb thing. Like
You're just
the
mad
idea.
that everyone uses it to describe Man of Steel,
Yeah.
and you're just mad.
Yeah, because
it's
like
not- it
aura
doesn't have a good
farming
story, it's
wasn't
just
a
aura farming.
thing, and it's not aura farming. Like even by definition, Man of Steel is not aura farming.
Although speaking of aura farming,
It's-
Midjourney apparently is seeking to reveal studios' use of AI in high-stakes copyright battle. I will say, I don't like AI. I don't like the concept of an AI company winning. But it is an interesting way for them to clap back at these companies like, okay, fine, you're going to take us for copyright. Fine, we're going to show people that you, in fact, have been using AI this whole time in your fucking movies, but you're just going to skirt around that and going to come after us for copyright. And I'm like, I hate both of these things. I hate movie corporations. I hate AI. But, like, in terms of this, Midjourney kind of has a point. Where it's like, okay, you're coming after us after, we're making AI stuff of like copyrighted material. Okay, but like you're also using AI in your movies and you're trying to act holier than thou, trying to get money from this, and you're acting just as much of a dickhead. So like, eat a dick. And honestly, I can kind of, it works.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like pick your poison in terms of who wins this battle. But like, gonna have a point though. They have a point. It's just like you're gonna come after us, well, we'll come after you back.
It's also so. I mean, this is a great article. You guys should read it in detail because there's nuances to this. Basically, the Midjourney lawyers filed a motion to get greater access to discovery, which basically discovery is a process when you get to request documents from the other side on the case, and so they want the studios to give over all the documents about how these studios use AI internally, because basically what they're saying, and it comes down to a lot of studios these days use AI, like especially generative AI. They use other copyrighted material to train their internal models, AI models, to help with storyboarding and other elements in previs, and they're like, look, Midjourney's saying that is effectively the same thing. They use copyrighted material internally on storyboarding materials that they use as part of their production. How's that any different than what we are doing? And the argument for the studios is you're doing it publicly, and it ends up like putting out like a Midjourney-fied version of Superman on the internet that we did not create and we're not profiting from. And so I understand both sides of the argument. For now, that motion is up for the judge to actually approve. They did restrict this whole idea of like the studios being able to turn that stuff over. Anything that's internal, the judge last ruled earlier in June that they couldn't do that. They could only turn over stuff that is publicly available or that is public facing, that AI materials that the studios have. And then now the new motion is basically appealing that. And so I understand the arguments from both sides. And you know what? Honestly, the studios do use AI. Like we've talked about it. The Warner Brothers used AI as part of what they did to train their internal VFX, AI, generative AI model on Michael B. Jordan from his many movies, including all the set photography for Sinners, because part of how they got, the two Michael B. Jordans in the same scene fighting each other, like one of them has the other one in a chokehold, it was partly face replacement traditionally and like head replacement with what they actually shot, and part of it was done using, you know, AI generative, like, you know, what they call deep fake, it's essentially generative AI, and they use the combination of those things, and that you need a bunch of images, thousands of images to train the AI to like generate that. And Midjourney's saying, you know, they might have pulled Michael B. Jordan images from movies that don't belong to Warner Brothers, like in the Creed movies and stuff, to do that. And like, you know, if they can prove that, they're saying that's the same thing as what Midjourney does with their platform. So it's a little complicated and nuanced, but ultimately I'm like, you know what, I would like the studios to get their ass kicked a little bit, because they are being a little hypocritical, although I understand, you know, you're going after your own IP and you want to protect it. So anyway, I digress.
And that's it. We're done with Quick Hits. So thanks for watching, guys. We are gonna run into DCU Daily. So let's start that up and be blessed.
It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see
right there.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Now you want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts. Here we go.
Victory mine. Ask me how am I doing? I'm telling you, really, I'm doing sublime. I never wait in the stewardess line. I just go do it. I'm moving my time. Really had nothing to do with it. How am I moving? I'm moving like you want to shine. Follow my lead. Don't listen to lies. I had to put me all in the line. That's why I know that victory's mine.
I prefer Jared Leto.
Hunka hunka!
All right, welcome on in to DCU Daily. It's gonna be a fun one. We got Man of Tomorrow stuff. We're gonna get deep into the Supergirl controversy, and we got some other quick hits, John. What are you most excited to get into?
I'm excited for everything outside of lanterns.
Cool.
Pretty much.
I mean, the lanterns bit is really small.
It's very
There's
small.
Not a lot.
Just like Tom
lot.
King's penis. So, you know, because I think that's
sure
part of
you
the
were gonna
reason
go
why
there.
he's just
Yeah.
ruining characters left and right. It's small penis energy. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm sure
pricing.
Tom King has a honkin' nanner. It's fine. 'Tis a joke. Yeah, so I did want to clarify this. Enterprising, no, it's not 2030. It's 2034 and 2035. And specifically, it's Superman and Batman from those initial introductions in action and detective comics, not like the modern interpretation. So it's essentially Superman, champion of the oppressed, guy who can only leap tall buildings in a single bound, has super strength, super speed, and maybe heat vision. But like, it's essentially that. And then Batman, who's more detective than, you know, like pulpy detective than like bam with superhero kind of thing. So yeah, that's essentially what it is. That's how that's like, for instance, like with the whole Steamboat Willie thing, you can only use Steamboat Willie now. You can't use the modern iteration of Mickey Mouse because that is copyright infringement. So it's very specific. So just keep that in mind. If you want to make a Superman movie in 2034, you specifically have to make the Golden Age OG version where he had like 3 powers and, you know, and very, very specific kind of vibe. So yeah.
All right, cool.
Anyway,
well, let's get into the rest of it.
But speaking of Superman, great segue, because apparently Swaybox, who was working on the film Dynamic Duo through various animation means, puppetry, CGI, stop motion, apparently they might have another film in development and for DC specifically, and it might be super family related. So, you know, Dynamic Duo is Bat family related, Super Family would be kind of the same vibe. But I would imagine it's probably not going to be DCU canon, just like how Dynamic Duo isn't. But if, you know, we'll see how Dynamic Duo does 2 years from now. But yeah, I hope it's, you know, if that does well, I hope this eventually comes out too. And I hope that's good, because it definitely, I like Swaybox because it like has like a very experimental vibe to it, kind of like Leica a little bit. So yeah, I like to see it.
Yeah. Yep.
Also,
the art is pretty good there,
Chimera,
I don't know if that's
your AI
Photoshop.
statements are very, very short-sighted. Just keeping that in mind.
Whose AI statements?
Where he's like, "Oh, I'm pro AI just to take money from the big wigs." It's like, problem is, it's not taking money from the big wigs. It's making the big wigs more money, and it's just taking more money away from smaller creators that get very little money enough as it is. So that's essentially what it is. So,
well, I think ultimately it mostly benefits, basically the oligarchs or the robber barons that run the companies because
it's
that's fundamentally
you saying that like, oh, AI taking away the monopolies that Hollywood had. No, it's like it would be benefiting Hollywood because now they don't have to pay people and they could just gen AI a movie and like it'll make shit tons of money. We don't have to pay anybody. We could just pay like 2 people to like write a thread of code that like shits out a movie and we don't have to try anymore. And it will benefit Hollywood, but it'll take away jobs from all the smaller independent artists or all the smaller artists that make these movies work. So it's not taking away from Hollywood. It would be taking away from those smaller artists. And it just, when you say that, you sound like you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. So yeah. But just would like to state that. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dan, what are your thoughts on this? Would you want to see, just from what little we've gotten from Dynamic Duo, would you want to see this? Or do you want to be like, hey, DC, get on your shit instead of thinking about more stuff like this?
Well, look, this is very loose. Like, I know the rap only hinted at this. I remember this is the report I mentioned, and this report was like partly about Supergirl, and it covered a lot of other stuff. Like later on when we talk about Supergirl, the Hollywood Reporter, that's where the Mr. Terrific news came out of that same article. So this was similar with the rap, and what they wrote about was basically hinting at the idea that maybe beyond Dynamic Duo, they might be working on another project that's DC related, and it could potentially be a super family thing. So, meaning one of the super characters, potentially maybe even crypto related. So, I wouldn't mind it. It's just we haven't seen Dynamic Duo yet, right?
Right.
So and this is, by the way, looks pretty hypothetical to me. It's like, oh, it's in development. Being in development doesn't mean it's got a green light. So it's not a situation where this is definitely happening. They might be tossing some ideas around because like animated movies take a long time to make, to develop, and before they even get into production. And even then, like, it's very, much normal for an animated movie to take from conception to release 3 to 5 years. Which is longer than, most live action films. You can turn a live action movie around from script to, release in as little as 18 months if you really wanted to. I mean, James Gunn's pretty much, done that with Man of Tomorrow, or will be trying to. But that being said, I feel like this won't get a green light until Dynamic Duo comes out. And if it does well, then I think, or if they feel really strongly about the idea, then sure. I mean, I think this is an example where you're doing an animated hybrid animation project. Toy Story, Minions, these movies work because they appeal to a broader audience. And so I think it's not really in the same lane as like the live action DCU, especially because it's not likely to be canon to the DCU. So I'm okay with that. I would love
also
to see
happy 4th, everybody, to all the Americans watching.
Happy 4th. Our hair gel in the DC budgets. I'm not gonna get into that. That seems like a weird question. Thank you for the compliments though, Stacy. Enterprising saying jumping ahead without knowing if it will work is another gamble. Yeah, well, I don't think they're jumping ahead. This is in development. This is not greenlit. There's a difference between something being greenlit, which means they're actively working on it. They might just be bouncing around ideas for it. So they would need to go through a process. I don't think anybody's writing a script for this. Like Swaybox Studios is not like a big studio. They're probably like putting most of their efforts behind Dynamic Duo, and I believe they had 1 or 2 other projects ongoing that were not DC related. So I don't think James Gunn and Peter Safran are like, oh yes, do this other thing too at the same time. But it's good. I mean, if DC could have a really positive, beneficial, profitable relationship with Swaybox, very productive one. So especially if Dynamic Duo does well. Yeah.
But that's just a small little thing. But now we move on to something bigger, and that is your boy Hal Jordan, which got his own promo pretty much from all the stuff we've seen in that initial 2 teasers, where it's him with the green bubble, the big thing over the thing, the suit,
Not a
the
lot of
ring,
new
him
footage.
visiting.
This
You know.
this just felt like a little promo that they did. Like, you know, I remember we saw something similar with Jon Stewart.
Yeah,
That actually had a
so
new piece of footage. So, or like extended shots of stuff that we have seen before, basically.
Yeah. Not
That
a
shot actually
ton,
looks
but I think
improved.
the shot of him throwing somebody against the wall, I think that's the only new shot I don't recognize.
No, actually, no, we do see that
this
in the
one.
second trailer. No, we have seen this
Do
one.
we?
He's interrogating that dude, and then he puts him against the wall. It's just such a quick shot. I don't think I remember seeing.
And it has like
I
some
do believe it
generic
was in the
pop
previous
song
trailer.
alongside it, so there's that too.
Exactly. Anyway,
But,
cool. Good for
Cool.
the
Great.
Lantern show.
Good for them.
Can't wait for
Don't
the
care.
marketing to pick up on this. Yeah.
But apparently we got a little bit more of Superman versus Warsuit Lex on the set of Man of Tomorrow, looking quite good. Superman
the
has
look of
this
this.
weird thing.
That looks like it's some kind of prop item, and you can see it's got tracking markers on it, so that will definitely get
yep.
replaced in post. It looks nice. I don't know if this is. I bet you this is from when they were originally filming. I don't think they're back there filming this because we talked about yesterday they were filming in Macon, Georgia, and the Macon, Georgia stuff was all interior stuff because the insides are what double for Daily Planet, so they had all the windows like duvetine off, or like the big entrances were all covered with like big blue screen boxes. So yeah. Chimera saying, did you guys notice that there's multiple Green Lantern suits in that closet? Yeah, I mean, but they all look the same, no? Like, I don't think there was there only one design?
I
thought
don't know. It went by really quickly, so.
Do you want to go back to it for a moment? I mean, I do hope there's a new trailer coming out soon. The 17th would be nice. But yeah, the Man of Tomorrow trailer might save lives when it comes out.
I mean,
it
you
might
kind of
save
see like
jobs.
we see another garment bag, but we don't see necessarily another.
Yeah. Hey, Johnny Rico. I don't think he's go back to the Man of Tomorrow thing. I don't think he's smacking Lex with the baby Joey. That would be rude. That just looks like is a part. Maybe it's a part of a car's like exhaust or something. Or maybe something completely different because he's clearly swinging from a distance. And that seems like a rehearsal of whatever they're going to shoot anyway. But then you got tracking markers on it. So whatever it is, it's part of the fight sequence and they're going to replace it and, enhance it in post. So remember, they get some reference in on set, but then when they replace it in post, it's easier for, the VFX artists to, match the movement and, get a better idea of the lighting on the object. So, yeah. But yeah, this is good. Cool. Good stuff, John. Good stuff. Yep. And I don't know why this took so long to get leaked on the internet. I feel like this person must have been sitting on this video on their phone, like, photos.
Well, you know what we're not sitting on?
Yeah.
Goddamn Mr. Terrific. Because apparently we will be getting a Mr. Terrific series, and Alan Heinberg, who co-wrote the original Wonder Woman film, along with, the Sandman show, apparently will write the pilot. So, guy who's actually had some, and he's also written a lot of comics. So, like, thank God it's not Tom King. So, a step in the right direction, baby steps. But this is exciting. I mean,
I like it. I like this. This came from that same article. We're gonna get into the Supergirl article and talk about Supergirl in a minute, but this was something that was kind of hidden away in like the last couple of paragraphs. Remember, John, when how long ago was it that we were talking about? Like we had his report when Superman came out, and then after Superman's success, we had a report. I think Nexus Point News reported it initially, and then everybody else sort of picked up on it. There was this news of multiple projects in the works, and they pitched out like several different ideas that they mentioned, like they're going to do something Gorilla Grodd related. There was going to be a Jimmy Olsen show. They mentioned maybe Mr. Terrific might be getting a show, and it turns out like the longer things go on, it feels like it wasn't like they were just considering some of those ideas. All of those ideas have turned into projects or in some stage of development. So I think it all goes back to like those ideas they were considering in the immediate aftermath of Superman. And now we're starting, like, Gorilla Grodd and old Jimmy Olsen are in the same show. But this Mr. Terrific series obviously has been in development now for, it feels like, at least a year. So yeah, there you go. I like the sound of this. I mean, would you want to watch Mr. Terrific TV show? I would imagine.
Yeah, you kidding me? I would
So, like,
love to see it. I want to see more Terrific. I want to see more Rizzler. I want to see more. I want to see all that. Like, Superman is the thing that works, so give them some spin-offs. It's people know these
I mean, it's very
characters now.
exciting.
People are excited these characters. They like them, so it's like, all right.
But do you think it would focus more on just him, or do you think it would be leading to like the Terrifics, maybe? Like, would you, or that maybe like
it could lead to
season
the
3
Terrifics, but
yeah, because like he's also like he's the same Mr. Terrific, who's in the Justice Gang. Remember they were talking about maybe there will be a Justice Gang focus show. Maybe the Mr. Terrific show is the Justice Gang focus show. So maybe. Yeah, and he was definitely the breakout from the movie. So I mean, again, this is early goings. I don't think it's greenlit, but if it was greenlit in the near future, yeah, probably after Man of Tomorrow. Because remember, the Jimmy Olsen show is already greenlit. They're going to be filming it this year. So that one we know we're getting probably next year at the earliest. This, on the other hand, feels like it's still in development. So it's yet to get a green light. But John, we've been kind of teasing it all show long. Yeah, I mean, I guess if James Gunn does get extended, then that would make it more likely that the show actually happens. Like certainly plans will change if James Gunn and Peter Safran are not around anymore. But speaking of, John, this article came up late in the day today, and this is like the biggest thing we have seen about. I mean, we have seen a lot of reporting over the past couple of weeks about Supergirl and why it flopped and what went wrong. And even earlier this week, while you were not on the show, I feel like every day, there was some big report in any of the, many of these big outlets that have good sources at the studio who are now talking because, they feel like, okay, so the movie bombed, we can talk about it. I mean, still a lot of them unnamed. So these big outlets have been reporting on it. So what I wanted to do, I mean, is kind of like what I've been doing throughout the week. Let's go through this article. I'm going to read through bits and pieces of it, and then we can pause and talk about it. Because there's a lot of information in this. And you know what I was saying last week? I was like, this movie feels like it's going to have a death by 1,000 cuts, ultimately cause it to flop the way that it has. It's not a singular thing that went wrong with this movie. And I bet you Warner Brothers and DC, and there were rumors last week that they knew this movie would be potentially problematic. And now we know why. So let me read this, and you can kind of scroll with me as I go. But it starts off by saying usually test scores go up and away. Meaning, test scores for movies you test a movie, you make changes, and you tend to improve on the test score. But this March, the scores for Supergirl actually went down when DC Studios held a bake-off testing competing cuts from filmmaker Craig Gillespie from the studio run by James Gunn and Peter Safran. It was a moment of this extreme disappointment for those involved as the stakes were high, particularly for DC. Supergirl would be a key test for the Warner Brothers division as its first feature that is not written and directed by Gunn following last year's inaugural outing, Superman. It needed to work to prove the studio could expand beyond projects that are directed by Gunn, who is of course an A-list filmmaker that's made the Guardians movies, Peacemaker, the Suicide Squad, and of course he is the very public face of the brand. Now, months later, the Supergirl outcome is now well known. The movie starring Millie Alcock as the titular character, and it was budgeted somewhere between $170 to $180 million. It crashed and burned on its opening weekend, grossing just $37.1 million, which is even lower than, Joker Folio Due from 2024, which made $37.6 million in its opening weekend. And it wasn't anything that was made by Gunn or Safran or even had notes about them. So they asked the questions there. They were saying, look, while one failure need not be an indictment of a slate, there have been all sorts of think pieces as to why the movie failed. Was Alcock right for the role? Was Gillespie right for the take? Our audience is tired of superheroes. Was opening the movie in late June a mistake? Was the budget too high? The fate of Supergirl may have been seeded early on. Gunn and Gillespie had creative differences over the direction of the movie. Numerous sources have told The Hollywood Reporter that the film never found its footing in the post-production process. The test scores are counted on a scale of out of 100 points, never escaped the 60s, according to multiple insiders. Another insider said the movie's top score was 70. John, I'll pause there for a moment. And so far what we have learned is the studio tested a version of the movie that was Craig Gillespie, oversaw the post-production on. And then they also tested a competing version that the studio tested. And later in the article, they'll talk about the difference there and who was involved with which. And they also mention how clearly James Gunn and Craig Gillespie kind of clashed on this, and they clearly weren't in agreement on a lot of things. So, and then you look at the test scores. They never got past the 60s. The highest potentially was 70. So right there, John, like, what is your reaction to that? Because to me, this is very much feels like a studio interference. It also feels like it's a movie, you know, that James Gunn and Peter Safran were not happy with, and they wanted to like have more creative control over it. And ultimately, the fact that they were doing, I mean, look, this kind of thing happened with Aquaman, but ultimately the first one ended up making $1 billion. So sometimes you do land the plane, even if a lot of this stuff goes on behind the scenes. But with Supergirl, that didn't happen. How do you react to this news?
I think it's a little disappointing because it's clear that like this Craig Gillespie like literally campaigned and pitched himself multiple times to be like, hey, I'm the best guy for the job. And James was like, all right, you're the best guy for the job. And then he was so impressed with Anna Naguera's script for the other Supergirl movies that he's like, okay, you're on this Supergirl movie, the different DCU version. And then both fell flat. And it's just like, well, where are we at now? It's just like you were championing the reason that a lot of people were excited for this was because you were championing the director side, like kind of what Warner Brothers was built on. They were the director studio, as you've mentioned many times before. They were more like in terms of creative vision, while
Kubrick,
Marvel,
you know, all these,
is more like assembly line. You get like a fucking Joe Schmo off the street. They directed 2 indie movies and a short film. It's like, all right, John Watts, get over here. And then you give them the keys to fucking Spider-Man. And then it's just like, okay, sure. And then a lot of these guys, unfortunately, like John Watts, like a lot of other guys that kind of, after the MCU, their careers tank because it's just like they can't get work anymore because Marvel isn't a guarantee for work. So now it's like, okay, James Gunn is like, okay, I want to create a vision. I want to make sure to give them the keys and do whatever you want. I don't have a thing for you. And then it's like, wait, okay, well, don't do that. Don't write Superman that way. No, don't make that. Oh, no, don't make Crumb a pedophile. Okay, let's not do any of that. Reconvene to scrub it all. Shit it out. And you're like, well, what's the narrative now, James? You were saying, oh, we're all for the directors, and now it's just like, oh, now we're gonna cut up the director's vision because why? So it's just, you know, it just, I mean, clearly the like you're making the same mistakes as the DCEU. You're saying making the same mistakes as the MCU, and it's just like, oh, we're just gonna get the same shit over and over again, and you know, time is a flat circle. So you know, it's just a little disappointing. Maybe it's entirely possible that this is a really very difficult and annoying learning experience. But it's just like sometimes, like, I feel like Peter Safran is kind of the guy that's really got to step in as the businessman, as the producer of all this, and be like, hey, hang on a sec. Clearly, the creative side that you're championing for, James, didn't fucking work because we had to come in and be like chop to make it like a somewhat digestible film, maybe for audiences, and even that didn't work. So it's just it's a little disappointing. But does this mean the DCU is dead? No, of fucking course not. But it's just like, well, I think this is going to be a learning experience, and you can hopefully only go up from here. Hopefully Lanterns is a good show. I don't think it will be, but there are some people that are excited for it. And then Clayface seems to be like a very intriguing way to make a superhero film by making it a body horror film. So there's that as well. But it's just like, it seems like we're following into the same traps of what made the DCEU fail. And yeah, I think it's just, I agree with Caleb. He said strike one. You got 3 strikes and you're out, James. So it's just like, we don't want to fall into those traps again, because now it's just like, well, now just try to learn from them, and maybe you need not like, there is like a sort of thing, because if you want to make things regimented, essentially this is going to be a really bad example, because it's the only example I can think of, and I don't agree with him on a lot of the stuff he did for this franchise, but just do what Mustafa Akkad kind of did for the Halloween franchise. Stay with me for a sec.
Okay.
So essentially what he had was essentially, I know, Dan, you know what I'm talking about, but for people watching, like a show Bible, show Bible, right? It's just, it's essentially have that, but for a cinematic universe. Like,
I mean, I feel like didn't they do like a whole writer's room retreat early days of the DCU?
They did do that, but clearly that didn't do anything. It's just like, I feel like you need to so I think it's just he sees himself as a creative filmmaker, so it's like, cool, great, and he wants to give somebody that freedom. But now, James, yes, you're still a creative filmmaker because you're still directing movies in this universe. But at the same time, you got to remember you're also the producer and co-CEO of this studio. So you got to put your foot down. You got to be like, okay, well, this thing is not going to work. This isn't going to work. That's not going to work. Because then you're going to get a thing that's cut up by the studio and shit out into theaters and not do well. So now it's like, oh, you're in a bit of a tussle. You have like half the people crying because it's like, oh, I thought this was going to be different. And then you got the other half being like, well, this movie stinks because of blah, blah, blah. So it's just a very complicated situation that you made more complicated when you promised something else. So I think it's just James Gunn needs to realize, like, hey, sure, give filmmakers as much freedom as you can, but you gotta also be like, okay, well, this is the universe I started. This is what we had in mind. Yeah, do whatever you want, but like keep it under this, that, and the other thing so we can make this work. So it's just not the way you vision. So again, hopefully it's a lesson learned. We'll see after this year how Lanterns does, how Clayface does, and, if James Gunn and Peter Safran are greenlit for another thing, which, at this point, again, we'll see how it goes, but it seems like we have three projects this year. Are we going to have, is it going to be, I hope it's going to be kind of like be the Star Wars prequel trilogy where it's 2 strikes and a home run. But who knows? And if it's more often than not bad, then David Ellison is going to be like, well, I love DC and I want DC to work. Bye to the two of you, because you couldn't make this work. So then you're going to, then it's going to become another DCU problem where it's the revolving door of chairman that had like 10 different visions for the DCEU because they couldn't settle on one thing. And you had 10 different people trying to figure out how to make this shit work, and then it ultimately went kaput. So we'll see. I can't imagine Paramount will do much better once they get the reins to this franchise, if they do get rid of Gunn and Safran. But yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I just want to kind of continue. I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I want to kind of address what Harold was mentioning, because I think that's later in the article they go through this. So I'm gonna continue reading the article for a moment, and let's go through, because the article does mention which of the 2 cuts ultimately ended up doing well. So after talking about in this article, this the highest that the Supergirl test screenings ranked was 70, and most of them were in the 60s. The article goes on to say they were not creatively aligned is the polite way of describing things, said one insider. Other insiders dispute this characterization, saying Gunn, Safran, and Gillespie had the normal amount of healthy friction any filmmaker and studio have as part of the process of making a movie better. And multiple sources say the duo respect the filmmaking chops of Gillespie, known for guiding Margot Robbie to an Oscar nomination for I, Tonya, which is all true. And then filming wrapped in May 2025, and as early as fall of that year, so just this past year, the studio and Gillespie knew the movie wasn't working. After a December test screening, and so again, Gillespie and the studio were on the same page at this point. So in December, they did a test screening which proved to be just okay. I believe we talked about this, and there were rumors about it at the time, so it looks like some of that was actually true. And so after the testing proved to be just okay, the studio decided to take matters into its own hands and took charge of the post-production to make its own cut. This is where I'm going to say 2 things. One, this is kind of normal. It happens a lot more than you think it does. It's just most of the time we don't find out about it. And two, it is a little concerning that the studio didn't put faith in Gillespie to be able to figure out the kinks. They clearly were like, whatever he's doing is not working. We're going to do it. We're going to try something else. And now this is where we get into the two different cuts. Now the studio enlisted writer Jeremy Slater, a Gunn favorite who previously wrote an unmade feature based on DC superhero team The Authority. So we know now that Jeremy Slater was the one writing that Authority movie, which got shelved. And he was brought in.
And honestly, I think that could have been really good considering his work on Moon Knight. So that could have been really good.
Yeah. Yeah, now, of course, in the article, they say the extent of Slater's involvement in this project is unclear, although it seems he helped write scenes for a 9-day shoot of additional photography. Original screenwriter Ana Nogueira remained involved in the post-production process as well. One issue at play was the climactic fight, which was reconfigured, and I feel like when you watch the movie, knowing this, you can kind of tell that they did move things around. There's even other sequences, like I feel like the Argo City stuff that they montage in the movie, I think originally was meant to be what opened the film. Like there's a lot of stuff from the trailers that is missing, like extended shots that we were missing. So clearly they were doing a lot of rejigging. Now let's get into the more of that. Now other issues with the movie in the article they say are unclear, but it is known that music, and I want to get your take on this, Sean. Music was a key friction point from his first Guardians movie on. Gunn has established himself as the master of the movie soundtrack and the all-important needle drop, earning praise for finding the right song and dropping it at the right time. Gillespie also has a reputation for melding music to movies, as seen in Cruella, which I did like what he did there, his 2021 movie that Disney cast Cruella de Vil as a punk rock rebel in London's fashion scene. So yeah, I thought that was pretty good. The movie had at least 4 test screenings, according to sources, with screenings held in December 2025, as well as February and March of this year. And while social media users and critics are dunking on the movie's use of a cover of the Jimmy Eat World song, The Middle, the big needle drop in the final set piece of the February screening, the middle of the 3 sets of screenings, or at least 4, but like, you know, they did some in March, but the one in February, that actually featured the cover version of Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. So clearly they then changed it up afterwards.
I also can't imagine working, so there's that too.
Yeah. Now, that was Gunn's choice. He wanted Girls Want to Have Fun. I personally would have preferred it, but I still think it would have been badly timed. And then, of course, ultimately they ended up going with the Jimmy Eat World cover. So now this, I'm going to like go to the next paragraph and then let's talk about it before we move forward. So the movie employed 2 editors, Harold, so this is what you were bringing up. There was Tatiana S. Rigel, who Gillespie, has worked with before, a longtime post-production partner, who edited his Lars and the Real Girl movie, I, Tonya, and Cruella. So this is Craig Gillespie works with Tatiana. That's his editor. And there was Fred Raskin, who we know James Gunn has been working with for a long, long time. He worked on all the Guardians movies with Gunn. He's worked on editing The Peacemaker with Gunn. He's also Quentin Tarantino's go-to editor. So Raskin knows a thing or two. He's got a portfolio as well. I mean, and Tatiana also, those 3 are impressive films that she's working on with Gillespie. So now, Raskin was brought on later in the process and proved a key instrument in the studio's slowly heavying hand. Now, before we move forward on this, Sean, the new things from these last few paragraphs are that, again, the music was something they were struggling with. They did at least 4 test screenings. They did a 9-day shoot that Jeremy Slater worked on writing. Ana Nogueira was still involved, but Jeremy Slater came in and helped rewrite a bunch of the movie. They reconfigured the 3rd act fight sequence, and somehow still, between December and March, they still didn't get any higher than a 70 out of 100, score from the test screenings. So, and not to mention, I just talked about like the 2 different editors. One was James Gunn's guy, the other was Craig Gillespie's guy. How do you react to all of this? Because this is like important. These are important details. Like clearly this movie got hacked up inside out, upside down. And that's now also explains why they went through 4 different composers. Like we were all wondering, and there's your answer. What do you think about all of these details now?
It just goes to show that like even then, even what's being explained here, I think I think it's just safe to say that like they didn't have a proper vision from the get-go. And I think, and this isn't me being like Tom King hater, all that stuff. They shouldn't have based it on Woman of Tomorrow. Like, that's the problem. Because
I agree with you. I think I was mentioning that earlier.
Because looking at that comic, that story is heavily entrenched on a more veteran Kara, a veteran Superman, and a bigger spectacle piece than DC can really afford with the character of Supergirl. See, you can have like these insane like experimental spectacles that are featured in Woman of Tomorrow because it's a comic book. You can like Bilky Evely can like do all these like insane colorful landscapes and do this weird experimental story. Even if I found it to be for the most part pretty boring and an ending which I still don't care for, even though apparently Tom King said Krem doesn't die at the end of the story, which, you know, the fact that you have to explain that like a decade after the fucking comic came out shows you suck as a writer, but that's beside the point. It's just with Woman Tomorrow, it just doesn't line up. Like you could do like just do a Supergirl as a cosmic story, like not even like Woman of Tomorrow, just like it's the idea of, you know, Argo City. She's more connected to the cosmos because of what happened to her family. She feels quote unquote more at peace with that. And then you can have that arc of her being more comfortable on Earth and like have like realize with how terrible it is. So it's just, you know, have her be this this character that's connected to Superman, because that I feel like Craig Gillespie was like, oh, I didn't want her in the suit for most of the movie. It's like, okay, fine, I get that from a thematic point of view and from a film point of view, but at the same time, we literally saw her in the costume already in Superman, so that lessens the
I was like, this is contradictory.
Like, it's contradictory, and also the continuity is fucked now because it doesn't make sense with when she arrived on Earth.
Her aging doesn't make sense.
Superman. So it's just like, what are we doing here? So it's just like, it shouldn't have been based on Woman of Tomorrow. There's again, this character has had, I think she was, I think she came about in comics in 1959. 1959 like was when Supergirl came in as a character. That's fucking over 60 years of history that you can go back to and search for something in the Silver Age, something in the Bronze Age, something when she was resurrected back in the comics. New 52. I would say, like, I know this is going to be terrible because I know a lot of people hate the New 52, and for good reason. It has a lot of problems and all that. But the New 52 was kind of the best interpretation of the character because it essentially does all the Woman of Tomorrow things without having the baggage of that story of like specific things that happened to that story. Right. You know what I mean? It's like you have Supergirl being not a veteran, but more experienced than she is here. You have Superman, who's very well known across the cosmos, which Anna Guerra said was in the original script, but they couldn't do that here because he's only quote unquote 3 years into his mission. So,
which was a James Gunn thing because he was like, remember, he's only been around for 3 years. So yeah,
he's only been around for 3 years, and with all of that, you should have just, done this story of, fucking have Lobo be the main villain. Don't have fucking Krem. Maybe like, what would have been good? Essentially do Birds of Prey, but done well. Have Kara be out in the cosmos. People realize, oh, she's Superman's cousin. Oh shit. Yeah, we can like kill her for a lot of money. And then Lobo fucking he's like, all right, I'm gonna go after this chick.
He's a bounty hunter.
Not really a lot. It's just a contract, it's whatever. So she has to fight Lobo, and then that's the story. And she realizes, oh hey, the cosmos are a fucked up place. I can't deal with this. And then she goes back home and it's like, I'm gonna attempt to be better at home and not have my trauma define me. What they try to do in the movie, but was not executed as well as it should have been. And boom, there you go. There you go. I just made your fucking $1 billion movie, James. Have fun. And I did it in fucking 5 seconds. So whatever. But yeah, it's just essentially, that's like, you could have made it a hell of a lot simpler, deal with the same ideas, deal with the same themes, maybe not as like, the deconstructionist narrative that you could have gone with. Because again, as you said, we don't have that establishment, so we can't We can't pull a Man of Steel if you don't have 5 other Superman movies that we can go back to,
right?
You know, so
yeah,
we only have the one,
like,
and nobody remembers that shit except for like the fucking comic book nerds. So
unfortunately, as unfortunate as it was, I was gonna ask you though, isn't Moment of Tomorrow meant to be kind of like this alternate version of the character? It's not like a mainline story. It's sort of kind of, is it? Am I wrong in saying that it's kind of like Logan, you know, in terms of what to Wolverine? Like it wasn't like the mainline story, and it was like a
it's I don't think it's canon to anything. It's just like I think it's an Elseworld story. It's essentially, you know, the whole thing was like, oh, it's True Grit in space. It's like, okay, cool, that's a neat idea. Tom King fucks it up, but you know, whatever. It's just like that's what they should have done is just have it be like just Lobo versus Supergirl. Boom, there we go, easy.
Right.
Like Lobo, because Lobo has been a villain. He's more anti-hero now, but he's been a villain in the comics. So it's like that's where he was originally introduced as. So yeah,
I think I mean the blame is definitely can go around.
I think the blame goes to a lot of different people. So I think literally the only people that are not to blame in this situation are the no-name people, like, you know, the cinematographer, lighting, like the PAs, like all like the people that, you know, not the big name people, all the lesser, quote unquote, I don't want to say lesser because, you know, it takes a village, like every part of a movie is important, but I mean like all, like, you know, the colorist or like the best boy or the key grip, like all those guys, all those crew, and Millie Alcock. Those are the only two types of people that are not at fault. Is Millie Alcock. She came in, did a performance, did the best she could, and pretty much most people can agree, even the people that hate this movie, said she gave a great performance. So she is not at fault, and the crew just doing their jobs are also not at fault. As well as, I guess you could say, the other actors as well, but I mainly am talking about Millie Alcock because she, and to a lesser extent Jason Momoa, are the best parts of the movie acting wise. But I'm saying Millie because she is the title of the movie. She is Supergirl. So I'm saying her and pretty much majority of the crew. James is at fault. Peter Safran is at fault. Anna Nogueira is at fault. And Craig Gillespie is at fault. They are all at fault equally. Craig Gillespie was the wrong person to helm this movie. Anna Nogueira was the wrong person to write this movie. James should have put his foot down more, and Peter Safran should have, you know, been more constructionist from a business point of view. That's what I think, because I think James Gunn essentially letting Craig Gillespie do whatever the fuck he wants, and then only come in after you're done filming. It's like, oh no, this is all wrong. We have to fix it. That's not how you should do things, because that's how the DCEU did things, and look how that turned out. So I think pretty much the only people that are not at fault is mainly the actors and the crew that are under those 4 people. So, and to an extent, like, I don't want to say it's Tom King's fault, but like basing it off of that story was one of the biggest issues of the movie. So
and to what Harold was saying earlier in the comment, by the way, and I agree with what you're saying.
And I'm not saying it's not difficult. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of different things here. So I'm not saying like, oh, they're evil people because they made a shitty movie. I'm like, no, they made a lot of wrong decisions that resulted in a movie that is not making money and has a mixed reception at best. So
I think this is, look, hopefully these are growing pains, because like Harold was saying, how do you not know that the movie's not working till you get into the post-production? Like, I mean, look, Jason Momoa did a great job. I think the casting was not a problem in this movie in general. Even Matthias Schoenaerts did what he could with what he was given. But, you know, there's a lot of times when you're working a movie of this size and scale, sometimes you know if the movie's so bad that you know it's not looking good while you're filming it. Most of the time, especially at this scale, blockbuster scale, you won't really know how good a movie is going to be until you get into post-production, you start to put the pieces together, and then something is just not clicking. So I don't blame, like, oh, how did James Gunn not know? Like, And also, like, you hire a director, the director needs to do their job. And I understand that, like, James Gunn is not, like, being heavy-handed until, like, they get into post-production, which is when the DC Studios got involved more closely. That's normal. I mean, Kevin Feige does this. I've talked about, like, Pam Abdy does this. It is, not the end of the world for the DCU, but it's one of those things. This kind of confirms some of the, the how should I say, some of the doubts we had. Like, can James Gunn have his cake and eat it too? He's never been a studio executive before. It's very different from directing a movie and being a producer on a movie to be running a studio, because he doesn't have that experience. Even Peter Safran, who has been producing movies and has got a production company for decades, and him and James have been working together for a very long time, but running a studio still comes with different kinds of responsibilities. And so far, we knew there was going to be a learning curve. I hope this is what it is, and these are growing pains. But what makes things seem so bad is because they invested over $150 million in a Supergirl movie where the character wasn't proven. This was your second movie out the gate. You build some goodwill with Superman, but then, something like, beyond what they did, clearly they wanted to get the best possible picture into theaters. That's why they did what they did. But the fact that we were in that position, I think, speaks to, they brought in two guys who had not been studio executives before. And I know Peter Safran's the business person, but neither of them have run a studio. They've run production companies, but they're not, it's different when you're running a studio, when you have this much IP, when you're dealing with not just the movies, but also TV shows and games and animation. They're working with Swaybox Studios for Dynamic Duo. They're working with a, rebooted Warner Brothers animation for multiple things. They're consolidating everything else that was going on before they arrived. James Gunn is going between providing script notes for a Batman script and a Wonder Woman script and earlier Teen Titans script, and writing 2 or 3 of his own things, then pre-production on Man of Tomorrow, while Peter Safran does promotion work for Supergirl. There's a lot on their plates. I just think I appreciate the ambition. I think it was just too big of a risk to go with a Supergirl movie right after Superman. And if it worked out, like I said yesterday, everybody would be popping bottles, they'd be getting congratulated. But if it shit the bed, which it did, and became a spectacular disaster at the box office and with the critics and audiences, which it did, unfortunately, then, the crows will come to, eat the carcass once it's, gone dry in the desert. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but, it's a pretty precarious time to have such a big flop, because like I was saying yesterday on the show and throughout the week, when the new ownership comes in, your margin for error grows even smaller, because that new Paramount Warner Brothers combined company is going to carry $100+ billion in debt, which means you cannot afford to have multiple movies lose you over $100 million. You just can't. It means less, fewer investors are going to come back to invest in your movies again, because studios don't spend their own money. They get financiers who invest in the movies, and then they get paid out at the end. You need to build good faith, and you also, Paramount's already gonna have a very, very small runway in general. So and DC is one of, if not the most valuable property they've got. So this is why I think now having this on the ledger is gonna probably make David Ellison more like, he's gonna feel more empowered to be able to say, look, I appreciate what you guys are doing with Superman. I think Man of Tomorrow looks good. Might even be a huge hit by the time he gets around to managing DC. But you guys had Supergirl happen. Here's what I'm gonna say: you guys do what you want to do, but Creature Commandos is canceled. We're not doing another Swaybox movie until Dynamic Duo really hits the mark. I know you guys worked on that, Jimmy Olsen show. That's good, but let's hold off on a season 2 until, unless it's a, runaway hit. And if Clayface was successful, okay, let's do more of those. But I still don't want you to spending even $40 million on lesser known characters. Here's what you guys are going to do. You're going to give me a Batman and a Wonder Woman movie pronto. We're going to build up to Justice League as fast as we can. Where's my Flash movie? Where's Aquaman? I want those A-listers. We want to hit home runs here. And you know what? Why I think that's going to happen? Because now you've given that 100%. New ownership a lot of fuel
exactly
to work
like
on
the DCEU, because they're trying too hard to be like Marvel.
Well,
so
I'm not saying it's always going to. I'm just saying what it means is James Gunn and Peter Safran will have less autonomy if Supergirl is the first of several things that underwhelms moving forward, that is not directed and written by James Gunn. But this alone, because of how big of a money loser this has become, that alone means like David Ellison can be like, he can point to that and be like, that happened. And I'm not saying this is gonna and again, this is speculation. I don't know what's going on in David Ellison's head, but it just, a new ownership that's gonna be strapped for cash is gonna want to hit home runs. They've already tried to do that. They're trying to maximize whatever the IP Paramount already has, like from trying to make 5 different Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies to working on several Transformers iterations and stuff. And like once they get a hold of DC, they're like, this is the cash cow. Like, we're going to try to hit home runs here. And you know what? It does work for Disney. It has worked for Disney. So, like, if you can get it to work, then it would be great. But if you don't, then like you said, John, it could spectacularly blow up in their face. I don't think David Ellison's going to take all the autonomy away from Gunn and Safran. I just think he's going to be a little more hands-on, and he's going to, want to direct the ship in a certain direction and be like, I want you guys to, like, give me home runs. We can't experiment. Like, I don't want to do, a Lobo movie if there's not a guaranteed 500 million in the box office. We want to do more Batman stuff. We want to do more Superman stuff. Sure. We want to focus on the Justice League. We want to do the big stuff. I'm not saying they're going to rush it. It just gives more fuel to the fire of the argument of, I'm going to be a little more heavy-handed because you guys, had the autonomy and, you produce a Supergirl. And again, it's one chink in the armor. It doesn't mean the end of the world, but it does mean that, they're gonna have less leeway for making mistakes. Now, let's continue with the article because I do want to finish reading the rest of this because I think it still have some more, important details. Again, Harold was asking earlier which cut ultimately ended up winning out. Which version of the movie did we actually get? Was it the one that Craig Gillespie's editor worked on, or was it the one that James Gunn's editor worked on? So now later in this article, they talk about there were signs that things were getting better. Deep into the winter, test scores did improve and hit the low 70s. However, rather than continue to tinker away on that cut, the studio decided to force a bake-off by creating 2 cuts, one by Gillespie and one by the studio. So you got the James Gunn editor, and then you got the Gillespie editor we just talked about. It is unclear, they say in the Hollywood Reporter, what major differences emerged, but one source says Gillespie's version was 11 minutes longer and featured more of the villain, Krem, played by Matthias Schoenaerts. When the 2 competing visions tested, the score surprisingly dropped significantly, although the studio's version inched out ahead of Gillespie's, but only by 2 points according to sources. Gillespie's version scored strongly on song choices, pacing, and villain, eking out a win, even a middling one. The studio chose its cut as the one to go into theaters. A studio insider says the differences were not particularly pronounced. So John, of those 2 cuts, they had one that was scoring better, but then instead of trying to make improvements on it, they went back and did the bake-off with the 2 different versions, which did not test as well. And then they just were like, okay, so we're gonna go with the shorter version that was only slightly better, maybe negligibly better. And I feel like the Gillespie version, if it had more Krem, which clearly was a problem, the villain, one of the biggest critiques for the movie is that Krem is a very generic villain that we don't see enough of.
Literally, all the problems
the song choices
that were showcased in people's reviews was the villain was the issue, the pacing was the issue, and the song choices were the issue, which looks like were all improved by Gillespie's version. Even if it's by a little bit, give me Gillespie's version. #release the
an extra 11 minutes. I was saying this movie should have been 20 minutes longer. An extra 11 minutes gets me halfway there. I'll take that, I'll take it. Yeah.
Damn
so
good
it looks
deal.
like the James Gunn's version of the movie is what
Damn
released.
Good deal.
So we we got the version of the movie that James Gunn essentially, oversaw the editing on with his editor versus Gillespie's version. So in this case, I would have leaned. Look, I think the problem, the mistake that they made was instead of continuing to improve the cut deep into the winter months that was doing well or was improving into the 70s, they went and decided to do 2 different cuts. I think that was a mistake because then they kind of locked themselves into this unnecessary competition, like an A/B test, which feels like a very corporate move. Like you do A/B test something in a marketing environment to see which one performs better relative to the other one. But the previous version supposedly was testing better anyway. So I don't know. Anyway, the rest of the article says studio insiders paint the back and forth process as a routine, but others, including one franchise filmmaker who spoke anonymously for the story but was not involved in Supergirl, held the opposite view. And this person, of course, has got experience being in these processes before for other movies, so I would trust this person's, what he or she or they had to say. Which this filmmaker said, it happens more than you think, but it's not normal. If a studio is going to put money into the testing process, it means they feel strongly about certain things, which makes a lot of sense to me. Like you would put a lot of money. It's not cheap to test a movie and go through multiple edits, especially having two different editors working on two different versions, and and then eventually try to figure out which one you're going to go with. However, John, apparently, according to the Hollywood Reporter, the movie was never tested again. Once they did the bake-off, they just picked one and they didn't test it any further. So as a point of comparison, the canceled Batgirl and the box office disappointment that was Shazam! Fury of the Gods, they tested in the 60s like pretty much most of Supergirl's tests were. And from that point on, if Gillespie believes strongly that something should be in the movie, he had to advocate for it. One source said, while Supergirl didn't meet her box office expectations, it's just one component of a broad, long-term strategy that DC Studios that we remain confident in. This is a quote that Peter Safran had from a phone interview that he did with the New York Times the week that the movie came out. The only quote that he had given that week to any outlet. Now, that, of course, is really rare that a studio chief comments on a bomb on opening weekend. So that is rare unto itself. But John, I think it's also problematic that they went to the bake-off and decided whichever one tested better, just put that movie in theaters. Like, they must have clearly thought it was a lost cause and it was not going to get any significantly better, so you might as well, whichever one tests better, you release it. But if you compare it, it tested about as bad as Shazam and Batgirl, and one of those movies never got released. And Shazam! Fury of the Gods was also a box office flop. So clearly, like I was saying before, DC and Warner Brothers knew this movie was not going to be good. So that's problematic. That means that they gave up on this movie because they were like, it's just not going to get any better. We did 9 days of reshoots and we did whatever we could, but it is what it is. We'll take the hit, and I would have expected better, considering, John, you keep pointing out James Gunn has been making promises about how we're not going to make a movie until it's ready to go, until the script is ready. Either we rather delay the film or not. And now they're running into an issue where maybe they thought the script was good when they went into production, but in post-production, they found a lot of issues with it, and they just couldn't figure out a way to get it back into shape. It's obviously not exactly the problem James Gunn was referring to before, but clearly, again, I think this is part of the growing pains argument that I was making. Like, this is something that Gunn
and the problem
will have
is
to learn from.
And the problem is it's not like it's 2008, 2009, 2010 anymore, because look when the MCU started, there was nothing else like it. Nobody, like, even though Incredible Hulk and Thor did not do very well in terms of mixed reception, maybe not reaching box office expectations, you still had, this was at a time where like people were still regularly going to the movies, where the tickets weren't as expensive. So there's that. And the thing is, this was a brand new shiny thing. Nobody's done this before. And then on top of the fact, you don't have the social media influence like you do today. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of there, but like literally the corporatization of so many social networks like Facebook and Instagram and all the, like, you see all the, and Twitter, you see all these corporate accounts on all these social medias that like, it's now you have like this, like more of this push of like viral marketing where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It didn't work for Masters of the Universe, and it didn't do much for Supergirl either. So there's that as well. And it's just patience. Now we've gotten, like, not just the MCU, we've gotten like 6 other cinematic universes have all crashed and burned. Ironically, the only other one still standing is the fucking Monsterverse. Go figure.
And that's never been rated all that well either, surprisingly.
But hey, they keep chugging along with that one. Dark Universe failed. The Millarverse that was going to be on Netflix fucking didn't even see the light of day. The Sony Spider-Verse without Spider-Man didn't work. The Amazing Spider-Man universe didn't work. So you had like all these ones that didn't work. Yet Godzilla remains. Keep chugging, Godzilla. But yeah, it's just like viral marketing, patience. We've seen this song and dance before, and it's post-COVID. So it's all of this where it's just like, because now, the thing that bothered me, the thing is why I wanted to kind of take a step back from all this news stuff, is not really people in the I mean, a couple people in the comments acting like dickheads, but it was mostly people that were like, that couldn't take a step back. They were like, yep, this is a failure. Pack it up. James Gunn sucks. Anna Naguera sucks. Send her to hell. Send Craig Gillespie to the ninth circle of hell. Fuck all these people. This is a failure. There's no hope. We're done. We're out. It's like, whoa, hang on a sec. I get it. You're upset. It sucks that this movie failed before it could even really begin. That sucks. I'm not gonna lie to you. But like, just to say like, oh, this entire universe is a failure after one movie is fucking ridiculous. Now, if we're talking at the end of the year, when it hits like November, and if Lanterns and Clayface fail, then yeah, I would say start to worry. But you're like, oh, Supergirl, automatically it means the DCU is a failure. Just pack it up now. It's like, whoa, hang on a sec. Let's not like go that far already. That's like being like, oh yeah, after Solo, Disney Star Wars needed to just stop. I mean, maybe it probably would have been better if they stopped after that, but you know, it's just, let's give them a chance. Like, I understand this is not great to see, not great to hear, but like, let's just kind of take a step and be like, all right, that sucks. I'm a little bit more cautious now, and I'm not going to get my hopes up, but like, I'm not going to write the entire universe off because of one movie that didn't make money, and it's gotten mixed reviews. I mean, that's not great, but it's better than, you know, Morbin Time, which had like overwhelmingly negative reviews. So,
although it actually, Morbin Time opened to a bigger opening, had a bigger opening.
That is true. It did open to a bigger opening, but at the same time, Transformers: Age of Extinction made $1 billion. Money doesn't mean shit. So, you know, I'm just like, that was the thing that was like really getting to me, where it's like, you had all the incels being like, see, this movie sucks because women shouldn't act, or whatever the fuck bullshit they were saying. And then you had the people that were fans that are like, oh, yep, Gunn doesn't know what he's doing. I was wrong to believe in this. Goodbye. And it's like, all right, I need to like fucking take a step back because this is just stupid. You know, it just exactly, and that's the thing. It's not going to survive another reboot, so it's just like, don't try with the cinematic universe, I guess. But that's why I'm like, just keep it going, keep it chugging. Let's see how it goes. Like, we got all the time in the world, right? So just keep it chugging and don't fucking shit the bed because of one movie. And it's, at the end of the day, it is just this is all fucking movies, for God's sake. Movies literally don't mean anything to the grand scheme of the universe. It's a fucking Supergirl movie, for God's sake. Calm the fuck down. I'm not talking about you, Enterprising. I'm not talking about most of the people in the chat. I'm talking about like just people I see outside of this little world we have here. So
yeah, no, exactly. Now, just to kind of wrap. Coconut cream pie sounds amazing right now. I just want to kind of finish up this article because, again, they talk about like, you know, what's upcoming in this universe, and they talk about the Jimmy Olsen TV series. They talk about James Gunn's Man of Tomorrow, obviously the Batman Part 2, which is not really DCU, but it's DC Studios. But then they go on. I mean, obviously this is where they mention the Mr. Terrific series with Eddie Kategi, John. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit on the article, John, but later in the article, they mentioned, but Supergirl's failure does put a scrutinizing spotlight on Gunn, who has positioned himself as the face of the company as no other studio head has before, thanks to his prodigious output on social media and comments in the press about quality control. Other studio heads, such as Marvel's Kevin Feige or Warner Brothers' Pam Abdi, are known to get vigorously involved in the post-production process, but none are filmmakers making their own movies while also co-running a major studio division. There's almost no modern precedent. Steven Spielberg, of course, runs Amblin, but that's a production company. It's not a studio like division. Rob Reiner was a partner at Castle Rock, which was a large-scale entity that was run by Alan Horn, who currently manages, Walt Disney Motion Picture Group. More recently, of course, Frozen filmmaker Jennifer Lee, she at one point ran Walt Disney Animation Studios until 2024 when she stepped back to refocus on directing. So again, she was like, I can't have my cake and eat it too. Now, the challenge for Gunn in the article dimension, and thus for DC Studios, is to navigate that fine line of being filmmaker friendly while also trusting his strong artistic point of view that has guided him all his career. DC Studios, of course, now has other challenges that are looming larger than Supergirl's failure or the villainy of Brainiac. There are the anxieties of David Allison's Paramount upcoming acquisition,
incoming leadership
of Warner Brothers. And then, of course, the biggest challenge for Gunn and Safran may be guiding a superhero studio right as superhero movies are no longer a bulletproof genre for moviegoers. So, one quote that is really damning at the end of this whole article is, Gen Z does not care about superhero movies, noted one studio head. That genre belongs to millennials, which means they're pretty much saying, superhero movies are for old people. They're not for the younger, but which I don't really believe it to be entirely true, John. But I want you to kind of like, what is your, because like they clearly say here, like James Gunn has been wanting to like have his cake and eat it too, essentially. And he's really put himself out front. Like you mentioned this in like several rants in the past about how James Gunn needs to kind of take a step back and make these bold claims about what he wants to do, because when something like this blows up in your face, then people are going to go back and like have receipts for when you said quality control. We're going to delay the movie if it's not ready to go. We're going to work on the script till it's ready to go. And then, in this case, we just went through the details. At one point, they tested 2 versions of the movie. Both got mediocre scores. And they were like, okay, we're done. We're just going to release whichever one ranked higher, which was negligibly higher.
Well, considering Gen Z are the ones going the other version to the movies right now. So there's that. Yeah. They make up the majority of the people going to movie theaters.
It does matter. It absolutely matters, because remember, Gen Z women did not show up for this movie.
They're the ones that made a $750,000 indie horror movie a $400 million fucking success. Yeah. So yeah, Gen Z matters. And if you don't, but John, so, like then you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Let's address these 2 points separately. The point about like James Gunn going out there saying, we're going to delay a movie if it's not ready to go. We're going to work on the script till it's ready. We're going to make sure we put out a good movie. There's a lot of quality. Essentially, he didn't say quality control, but essentially all of like what he has said before kind of leads into that idea. And the fact that he's been so public about it, and then when something like this blows up in your face, and then we find out that, they at some point essentially gave up on the movie because they tested 2 mediocre versions of the film, both of which tested badly in the 60s out of 100, and they said, we're just going to go with one of them, which didn't even sound like the better version based on what the critiques of the movie are, and the version of the movie that we talked about that had all those things, about better of those things, they left on the cutting room floor. Like, do you think moving forward that they need to change how they approach this stuff? Because I feel like at this point, like, I don't know, I'm not saying James Gunn get off the internet. I'm just saying you can't make these big proclamations and then have something like this happen, because people will collect their receipts. Like that's been I feel like it's been a long time coming, and now it's finally happened. It was going to happen eventually. I just don't think anybody thought it would happen this soon. But I feel like that's something that's got to change, don't you think? Like, I appreciate debunking fan theories and stuff, but you can't be making these big proclamations, because then at the studio level, you can have PR nightmares like what Supergirl has become. Like, isn't like, do you, because, I mean, what do you think about that? Like, we'll talk about the Gen Z stuff in a minute, but I think that to me is concerning.
I think it's just a bunch of mixed signals, a bit. It's just a whole mess of stuff that like you promised, and now you're not making promises. It's like, I understand, like, he's the studio head that's like one with the people because he's, commenting to people on threads and all that shit. So it's just like, yeah, I think that means something. So like, it's like a whole mess of stuff. That's essentially what I'm saying. It's a whole mess of stuff. Keep your promises. Don't spend so much time on fucking threads. And, that's why I've said like a bunch of times, James Gunn, shut the fuck up. Like, I get it. I get what he wants to do. He wants to like be more connected with people, but like sometimes it just doesn't work. Just do your fucking job, you know?
Yeah, it's a situation where, like, I hope this has been a learning experience, and they're gonna try to pull back on some of those things where James Gunn is not gonna publicly make these big proclamations as much. I appreciate that he's very like a man of the people. I think that's different. It's unprecedented, yes, but in a good way. I think the fans appreciate it. But there's a lot of things where we have seen like half of the slate they announced a few years ago has not come to fruition. There's also I want to mention this other thing, John. There, I know James Gunn and Peter Safran don't like the idea of announcing a slate of projects because they don't want to commit to release dates, because then that means they're going to rush through the process. But clearly in this case, it didn't help them with their approach that they were doing to, put out a movie that was lesser than it should be, right? So it's like their approach isn't exactly bulletproof to avoid the problems. Now we've seen it with Supergirl that they proclaimed they wanted to avoid. So one thing I was wondering, like, I think when in the early days of the MCU, there were movies that were sort of like mediocre. Like a lot of people, like, I think Thor has aged well, but a lot of people said Thor was not a very good movie. The Incredible Hulk is still, a lot of people say, was not very good. Like, there were early days of the MCU, some movies were really good. I mean, Iron Man 2 people were still, split on. A lot of people hated the ending of Iron Man 3, but the MCU at Disney have always tried to like tell you what the next 5 things are. And that gives people a certain sense of assurance. Now, I'm not saying we don't know the next few things in the DCU, but do you think like the idea that they're not doing, going to these big Comic-Con events, they're not doing these big slate announcements? Because I feel like, if anything, when you have some kind of a PR nightmare like this, if you have the next 10 projects out there, at least, even without a date, one, you have to, if you're making that public announcement, that means you're gonna have to hold yourself accountable to that slate, which I think is a big responsibility. And I feel like on some level it's cowardice to not be willing to announce it and using the excuse that we're not doing it because that will tie us down to certain release dates. Because Marvel has shown they can put a bunch of movies on a slate graphic, like the one we were looking at earlier, and then like with Blade, if shit goes sideways, they will change the dates and people don't care because they at least know this. This is good PR marketing, because it buys you a little bit of margin for error. It gives you a bit of like, the cushion of like, okay, sure, Supergirl wasn't good, but then we have like the next 3 years mapped out. And like, even if you don't like what's coming out the rest of this year, maybe 2028 looks really good to you, or 2027. We know 2 of the movies, but we don't know any of the TV shows, and we don't know if Creature Commandos is actually going to come out next year or not. Do you feel like they need to kind of take a few things from Kevin Feige's playbook and implement them, because it might buy them a little more leeway?
I think so, at least a little bit. Like, I feel like stay the course with a lot of the stuff you're doing right now, because I do think that a lot of it is good ideas on paper, and I think in practice it would be better, like, keeping to the artist's, vision, and also like greenlighting projects only when the script is done. But like at the same time, we're 2 years in, and still, out of the 10 projects that were promised, and again, I feel like that was more of a Zaslav thing than a Gunn thing. Only 2 of those movies have happened. 1 of those shows have happened, and we're still waiting on the rest. The Authority is technically canceled. Swamp Thing hasn't been talked about since Mangold was doing press for, I think, A Complete Unknown, and that was like, what, 2 years ago now? So, yeah. I think, and then, what was that last movie? It's Superman, Supergirl, Swamp Thing, The Authority. What was that last one? There's one more movie. There was a 5th movie.
Did you say Batman? Supergirl, Batman.
Yeah, Batman Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of being worked on right now. And then you have the TV shows. You had Booster Gold, which is up in the air. Like, you kind of had the whole thing with like,
they went through 2 different writing teams. Yeah.
Paradise Lost, which apparently is in extreme development according to Gunn. Paradise. So the Paradise Lost. Waller is, I think, fucking canceled at this point because there's nothing that's been said about that. And then Creature Commandos season 2 is happening. And then there was one more, and I'm forgetting that
Swamp
one.
Thing. Oh, that was the other movie, Swamp Thing.
No,
Whatever
I did
the
say
hell-
Swamp Thing because I
you did say
mentioned
Swamp
James
Thing. Okay,
Mangold.
sorry. Yeah. Okay. But the
Um,
TV shows, there was Booster Gold, there was Waller, the Creature Commandos, Paradise Lost.
I have.
Was
a
there another
list.
one? I don't know if there was another one. Are we forgetting something?
Oh, Lanterns.
Peacemaker
That's
season 2
happening.
was
Yeah,
Lanterns. Okay, so that's happening. Yeah.
I had them written on post-it notes, but I got a new computer in the meantime, and the fucking my monitor is like, huge. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, exactly. And then okay, so clearly that slate was less of a slate and more of like just this is our checklist and maybe like these are our goals. I think at this point is how they should consider it. Harold saying streaming development while developing while on skateboards.
you want to
Yeah,
know
the
how
fact that we
old these
forgot about
post-it notes
Lanterns.
are? I still have Superman Legacy and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow
Yeah.
on
Ugh.
this fucking that's how fucking old they
Yeah.
are.
Now, the other thing that I kind of want to talk about before we finish up, John, is the whole idea of like, I don't believe the studio heads, that particular studio head who said that, Gen Zers don't care about superhero movies.
I think they care.
Superheroes
just
are for millennials.
not as much.
I don't think that's true. I think, again, that's like hyperbole if you're painting with a broad stroke. I think millennials and Gen Zers love good superhero movies. Like, people showed up for Superman. People showed up, are going to show up for Spider-Man No Way Home. Plenty of Gen
100%.
Zers are going to show up for that. So, and the Batman made a shit ton of money. The Batman Part 2 is going to make a lot of money. So, it's not that Gen Zers don't like superhero movies. I think Gen Zers have a more refined palate and they are more
Because the
discerning.
thing is, they have
Gen-
no money, so they're spending, and going to the theater is a lot of money, so they
That's
want to
true,
spend it on the
but-
right movies.
But even beyond that, John, think about it this way. Us millennials grew up at a time when superhero movies weren't really the go-to genre. So we remember a time when we didn't have it this good. And then we really had it good. So we are like, oh my God, I'm going to go support a decent, like a mediocre movie, even if I have to, simply because I don't want to go back to the time when superhero movies were like, 2 mediocre ones came out in one year and then maybe one came out the next year and they weren't, given the level of importance and didn't have the best talent in the business working on them like they are today. Gen Zers grew up at a time when superhero movies were the it thing. That's all that they, like, to them that was like that was all of their pop culture, like, information. Like they loved it. So I'm not saying Gen Zers don't love superhero movies. I'm just saying their bar for quality is a lot higher. They will not show up for the movie if they don't think it's good, because also Gen Zers are more like, they're very like, they're like, okay, like you said, John, they're gonna stay at home and do something else. They're gonna want to make sure that the little money that they have, which is lesser than the previous generation, that they use it appropriately. Like, if a movie is gonna be a home run for them, they'll show up for it. But if not, they don't want to pay $22 for an IMAX ticket. Like, and then case in point, John, the rap article that came out earlier this week, which has been referenced a lot throughout the week for many other things that they're included in it. One of the things it mentioned that 59% of the people that showed up for the opening weekend of Supergirl were men over the age of 25, aka millennials. The women didn't show up. The Gen Z audience didn't show up. So I'm like, who did they make this movie for? Like, who were they targeting? Like, either they didn't know about it. I mean, now that we know, like, they couldn't even figure out a good version of the movie and ultimately gave up on it. So a lot of the pieces add up, but I'm like, clearly now you understand it's death by 1,000 cuts. And now we know why. And now we know how we got from A to Z. And unfortunately, this movie failed on a lot of fundamental levels. It didn't have an audience that they were targeting specifically, because they couldn't even figure out like the best version of the movie at the studio level. And ultimately, as a result of that, people just didn't show up to watch it. Like, if you are not getting the female crowd to come watch a Supergirl movie, then I don't think in most instances that movie is going to do very well, because that is your primary target audience. And then the script was weak, you know, there was a lot of issues there. Then the direction and the VFX we've talked about, they edited this movie, now we know, to not just within an inch of his life, but through like 3 or 4 different cuts that they tested. And then the music was a problem. These are all the things. I'm not saying this is as bad as what they did with the Suicide Squad, because they actually, you know, locked out the director from the editing process. It feels like Craig Gillespie was still involved on many levels, and obviously he went out there, did the whole promotional tour, but it just, you know, it may not be as bad as that era of Warner Brothers, but this is still pretty bad. Like, and especially now that these details are out in the world, it's really a PR nightmare. Hi, Kavari. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. We talked about how James Gunn had his editor come in and work on a version of the movie, which ultimately is the version of the movie that we got. Essentially, the movie that we got in theaters is the version that James Gunn's editor edited, aka the studio version. So, and it was 11 minutes shorter and had a lot of, you know, had a lot of the flaws that the other version did not, supposedly. So that Craig Gillespie had worked on with his editor. So anyway, what a way to end a week of Supergirl news. Just, you know, this is not what the DC needed right now, that Enterprising was saying earlier. And on that note, I think we will wrap it up for the week. We got Fancast Friday coming up, but we'll be fancasting DCU Batman. And yeah, we'll see you guys there if you join us. But otherwise, if you don't, you know, have a happy 4th of July. And we'll see you on Monday, and we'll see you all of next week, Monday through Friday, on another episode of DCU Daily. Until then, even though things aren't looking up right now, you know, stay blessed, and I guess look up, look out, because Man of Tomorrow's on the way. See you later.
It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see.
Right there.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Now you want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts. Here we go.
Victory mine. Ask me how am I doing? I'm telling you, really, I'm doing sublime. I never wait in a stewardess line. I just go do it. I'm moving my time. Really had nothing to do with it. How am I moving? I'm moving like you want to shine. Follow my lead. Don't listen to lies. I had to put me all on the line. That's why I know that victory's mine.
I prefer Jared Leto.
Hunka hunka.
And remember, fuck the chode with lips, Tom King and Jeff Snyder.